Hello and welcome to Cinema to the Letter. This episode's that new film known as Turning Red. On Cinema to the Letter, we break down the very nature of cinema, letter by letter. For each episode of a season topic, we cover 6 films that fit as C for classic, I for indie, N for new, E for egregious, M for masterpiece, and A for atypical. Because who doesn't love an acronym, am I right? I am Thomas, and I'm here, just isolated here, because I don't want to be around people right now. I'm feeling weird and gangly and kind of furry. It's not a red panda thing, it's very different.
Hello, I'm Bryan, and I've only heard a couple of their songs in this movie, but I am a four-townie. I have to say, I have to admit it.
Oh, that's true. I mean, their peak was in 2002, though. Like, not too long after this, it really falls off for them. I mean, there's a lot of agent stuff and whatnot. I hear one of them's like a Christian rock guy now. But welcome, everyone, to the latest episode in our animation season, where we've reached the end for new. The end for new is always interesting to kind of parse out when we plan the season, Bryan. And I think the ultimate thing was we wanted to cover a Pixar movie, because we have talked about Pixar to some extent on our Patreon. If you're a Cineast patron, patreon.com/cinema number 2 letter, you'll know that our first ever full franchise was on Toy Story. And we talked extensively about those 4 films. The 4 Toy Story films, not really one of the other ones kind of related, which will be, I think, relevant to this discussion. The new crop of Pixar movies is a very, it's kind of all over the place, quality-wise, I would say. I think you got some great ones, you got some good ones, and you got some shit. Some of the worst stuff they've done. It's a real mixed bag. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of a similar discussion to the Marvel conversation, where
Yes.
you can't really blanket, say like, oh, all of them are bad now. Like, we get some good ones, and we'll talk about some good ones. We just got a good one, I would say.
Yeah.
We'll leave the kind of discussion of our, of Pixar in a little bit, but, we talked a little bit about this with Disney when we did Fantasia,
Yes.
where, there's a lot of the creativity is just not there anymore. And I think it's very much the case with Pixar, and they're in a very weird place. Some of it is, due to maybe some head people who did some bad things. I was reading up on that. We can get into that a little bit, but I think for this movie in particular, and there's a lot of stuff around this movie, including the release of it, it's a really fascinating movie for Pixar, and I think signals like a direction for them to take in the future, hopefully, and not do, you mentioned Toy Story. They're doing a Toy Story 5. I have very mixed feelings about that.
Yep,
but
especially the more that we found out about it, the more I'm like, oh no, what are we doing? Have you heard about the premise of it?
I haven't. I just know that it's the guy who did like Good Dinosaur and like some other Pixar movie that I was not a fan of. Who is this? It's
No, I think you got this wrong.
Oh no, it's,
because I think you're talking about Peter Sohn. He was announced for Incredibles 3 directing that.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yes, that's another one.
Toy Story 5 is Andrew Stanton.
Yes.
So,
okay.
I mean, maybe, hopefully that'll work. But like it's a lot about apparently an iPad-esque device being introduced. Yeah.
We'll get I'll get in more in depth to how I feel about Pixar as of late, but I think this movie is such a fascinating like embodiment of the sort of bright future for Pixar, what Pixar could become if they can kind of leaned into this a bit more. And I think it's just it's also just one of the best movies they've made in years. Like
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? So, in terms of the Pixar story, I'll tell the short version. You got Toy Story 95, massive success, groundbreaking film. That segues into kind of like the initial wave of success for Pixar, to varying degrees, but mostly just pretty big successes. A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, you get into Finding Nemo as well in this
Monsters Inc.
Monsters Inc. Yes, I skipped over that unfortunately. Incredibles, first Cars, but then like Ratatouille and Wall-E. Like this is around the time where like Pixar's still independent until about Cars. Then they get bought officially by Disney. They just had an agreement for distribution with Disney until Cars when they had when Bob Iger took over. And I'll still never forget this. The fact that he went to like I believe a parade at one of the I think Shanghai Disney, and he noticed that like when people saw like the traditional kind of Disney characters, they kind of like politely clapped, and then the Pixar characters came out and they were like fucking on standing ovation. Woody and Buzz, they love him, and Bob Iger's like, gotta buy Pixar, have to do that now.
Like I think we both, with the exception of Cars, I am not a fan of that movie, but the first like decade and a half of Pixar is unfuckwithable. Like is just that is like I think we have a lot of nostalgia for that because that's when it's certainly when I grew up, and I think you as well. But
we were both children of Pixar, pretty much. I think anybody who was born from like 1990 forward is to some extent a Pixar kid in that like you went to multiple Pixar movies. And Pixar was like a brand name that like really like solidified with people.
And I think it's interesting that you look at the ebb and flow of like Disney animation parallel to Pixar. Pixar kind of starts when the Renaissance is waning a little bit.
Yes.
And into the early 2000s, like Disney's making some of their worst films, and Pixar is making, they are the new thing. They are the hottest animation studio, and they were to us what Disney was to a lot of older generations in a lot of ways.
Right, and at the same time, there was also just a lot of like people trying to catch up with that. You notice the death of hand-drawn animation happens during this time, pretty much, and Disney starts trying to do like the animated stuff, like the fact that Chicken Little, which is one of the worst Disney films of all time, was made by, I believe it was, I don't know what, it's like Circle 7, I believe was the name of the studio. They only made that, but the other things they were producing were Michael Eisner mandated direct-to-video sequels to Pixar films that never came out. Like their original version of Toy Story 3 where Buzz got recalled, shit like that. Just like stuff that like would have been dumb, and I'm glad never happened. But they're trying to do that, and they're doing like their Meet the Robinsons and stuff. And notably, around this time, a certain figure, Mr. John Lasseter, transitions from Pixar to being the head of Walt Disney Animation. And, we're very firmly like, fuck John Lasseter, don't support Skydance Animation. But it is notable that, like, their output really dips after he gives them his final farewell of Cars 2.
What a farewell.
Director, what a farewell.
One of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life, maybe. Like, genuinely.
The worst Pixar movie still. Has not been beaten by any movie. That movie's terrible, and then a lot of the other movies that follow are not great. Like, I don't love Brave, but that movie had a really bad production based on, shockingly, bad management over at Pixar.
Sure.
And then, there's like Monsters University, which I think is alright.
Yep. Inside Out,
which I think is the best of this era. Because then you got, like, Good Dinosaur, Finding Dory, Cars 3, Coco.
Yeah, they also... Coco. Coco, though.
And then Incredibles 2 and Toy Story 4, that rounds out the 2010s. So largely, I think, like, a lot of, not even, like, I think terrible movies, just a lot of, like, very forgettable films. I think Good Dinosaur is that, Brave is kind of that to me, Finding Dory.
Yeah, I'm a little bit kinder to Brave as I rewatch it. I think it's, like, decent. Toy Story 3 might be the beginning of the, like, this sort of problem we're in now in cinema in general of legacy sequels, let's bring back old characters, nostalgia-driven filmmaking. Like, it really feels like the beginning of that because it's 2010, and it sort of signals to Pixar that, like, hey, we can just make more sequels, or in the case of Monsters University, prequels, which Monsters University is like a fine movie. It's a pretty fun movie, but like it's weird that it is a prequel, and same with Finding Dory, which is just very kind of nothing. Like I
Yep.
haven't thought about it since I saw it.
Even though it made $1 billion.
Right. And Cars 3 is, whatever. Like I stand up for Incredibles 2 because I think Brad Bird, you know, is just an insane person who is able to just create such expressive and weird animation. But
Hmm.
I think another thing that goes into this end of phase 2 of Pixar, if you will,
Yes.
this mechanical nature of Pixar, their stories, like they have like the sort of like what is it, like 12 rules of Pixar. I knew more about this when I was a kid.
It kind of melts together. Also, like there's this weird thing in Hollywood, like you mentioned, like John Lasseter had this. Also, Dan Harmon had this thing with like the story circle or whatever the fuck. These like almost feels like we're trying to do a fucking seminar to teach people how to
Mm.
do fucking like, oh, this is like how the structure, like it's like a more complicated version of like Save the Cat, the fucking book. It just it's this weird thing that I think has hurt more, like not just the way that movies are structured and put out in Hollywood, but also the way people think about these fucking things. Like
Mm.
dorks who fucking love Dan Harmon. I love a lot of Dan Harmon stuff, but the people who are like, no, but he has the exact kind of story structure element. Like can we not just like have creativity and like different things? We don't have to like have a fucking rail system
Yeah,
for this.
and I think a lot of the Pixar movies fall victim to this sort of structure that they impose on them. There's a lot of like the more that you watch these Pixar movies and the more that they go on, like you start to notice these things. The twist villain, the point in the second end of the second act where the two characters split up, right? Which happens in like it happens in Monsters Inc. It happens in
Toy Story.
Toy Story, obviously. It happens in Inside Out. It happens in a bunch of these movies, Onward, Luca, like we'll get to this era, but like you really start to notice that, and you really start, and they become also Pixar has always kind of been emotionally manipulative. It's kind of always been their thing a little bit. But again, you lose a lot of the kind of creativity and the emotion there, and it doesn't feel as earned. Like the ending of Monsters Inc. still makes me cry because it is so earned, but a lot of these other movies start to feel kind of almost rigid. There isn't this kind of
Yeah,
fun and I don't know, kind of thing to it. And
I would argue Coco and Inside Out are the two that avoid that.
I mean, yeah, even Coco does that as well, but Coco is also
Right.
just full of so much light. I mean, the movie we're talking about today does that, but has some of that, but I think has so much creativity that you kind of get over that because it earns it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think, yeah, the better ones like Coco and Inside Out, even like Incredibles 2, I think has that as well. But
Mm.
yeah, when you get to the 2020s, I think you get an interesting kind of frustrating output of some of the more generic ones you're talking about, and then also interesting chances that I think are like curious, like Turning Red, but also like in this run you got Onward,
Hmm.
Soul, Luca, Turning Red, and then Lightyear, Elemental, Inside Out 2. And Elio, which we should mention, we're
Yes.
recording this on the Tuesday after Elio open to
Mm.
not great, the worst opening of a Pixar movie, I believe, ever.
Which, we're not talking about Elio here, but such a shame.
Mm-hmm.
Our director, which we will get into, Domichi, is one of the directors of Elio, and
Yes.
I think this era is so interesting because they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to do your sort of weird stuff that Pixar would kind of never do, which I would count as Turning Red, Luca. You have Doctor doing his thing with Soul, and then they're trying to do what is kind of, I think, of traditional Pixar stuff, like Onward. Elemental's an attempt at that,
Yeah.
but falls flat on its face in so many different ways. And same thing with Lightyear. Like it's like they are trying to do sort of spin-off sequel stuff, Inside Out 2, but also trying to do, like I think it's really it says a lot about Pixar that they put this movie on Disney Plus, which we'll talk about.
Yep.
And then a few months later they put out Lightyear into theaters, which that movie is sucks butt. Like, I don't know how else to put it, but like That movie is not great at all, and is so generic and forgettable. And yet, I have quite a few issues with Soul. I rewatched it this weekend, and I definitely came to realize some
Yeah.
things about that movie, but
Hmm.
it feels like an attempt at, you know, trying to do the Pixar thing, but like it's got a fucking Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score. Like, and
Yeah.
it's got like a lot of really interesting stuff. And Luca, which I also rewatched and I think is fucking fantastic. I adore Luca. I think it is like one of the most sort of, I don't want to say anti-Pixar because it has a lot of the sort of things we're talking about, the characters separated in the second act, but there's such a coziness to it, and I love the sort of relaxing seaside town kind of vibe. And a problem I have with like some of the Pixar movies, like Elemental, for instance, or like Onward, is the emotional stuff is so cloying and is so like it's so forced, and it's like they're
Hmm.
trying so hard to get to make you cry. Like, this is the moment in the Pixar movie where you cry. Like, it Luca doesn't have as much of that. It has a lot more. It's also just so expressive and unique, and I definitely subscribe to the fact that it is a kind of subversive story about being gay, which is like such a fascinating element to that movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this movie has a lot of those kind of like elements for, as much like left leaning as Disney and Pixar present themselves to be, as we've discussed, I think a lot, like a lot of their quote unquote representation can be very performative.
Yeah, I
Um
mean, particularly all that controversy around, I forgot what the show is called, but the Disney Plus show that Pixar
oh
was
yes,
producing.
Win or Lose, I believe it's called.
Yes, I saw that when I was searching around Disney Plus. If you don't know, there was a whole controversy about they had a trans character and a storyline for that. And shortly after an election happened in November, they thought they should get rid of that character entirely.
Yeah, and of course,
Yeah.
like as you talked about with Lasseter, I was reading some of those kind of articles about the sort of boys club and the sort of like culture at Pixar regarding Lasseter and some other of the higher ups, and like it really kind of hurts the, not just like the brand, but like it hurts the creativity at the company. If I also watched for this, I watched the making of Turning Red, that's on Disney Plus, and they talked a lot about how they had an entire female team for the sort of like head of departments. And like, again, what a wild concept, but that is such a sort of like mark on Pixar, that sort of reputation. And with this movie in particular, it is such a like bolt of lightning to of like creativity, and really kind of shows again like what Pixar could be if they leaned more into this and not making Toy Story 5 and Incredibles 3.
It's so frustrating, especially with like I want to briefly talk about Elio at least because I don't know, you're getting a bonus
Yes, yes,
like audio
yes.
review here up at the top, which we both saw over the weekend. One of the few, the proud, the Elio uh, members of what was it, the Galactic Communiverse,
Oh,
I
the
believe is what it's called.
Communiverse.
Or members
Yes.
of the Communiverse, yes. Which I just what my whole thing with that movie why I liked it and enjoyed it so much. It's basically just like about if a kid accidentally became like a part of the Star Wars Galactic Senate and helped him make friends. And
Yeah.
that's like a cute idea. That's a really cute idea for a movie. I think it's very well handled. I really like the main character, the titular character, and the lived in stuff with like him and his aunt played by Zoe Saldana, which I thought it felt very
Mm-hmm.
like emotional and authentic. And then when he ends up going into space, he ends up getting abducted by aliens as is his wish, as he wants to be. I like all the alien designs a lot.
Oh,
Particularly,
so many cool little guys.
my favorite little guy is, and I'm so biased against this, especially for like animation and Disney. That little dude who's got like the tendrils in front of him, like he's Zoidberg, and he's like, "Oh, hello, Elio,
Yes.
welcome." Love that
I
guy.
love that guy. Yeah. And like it also, again, like it has a lot of the emotional stuff that you expect from Pixar. It is not nearly as cloying or annoying as
No,
it
yeah,
should be. And also like it is bookended by Carl Sagan, a Carl Sagan speech, and there's a
yes,
Talking Heads needle drop. Like,
yeah,
I think I have a big issue with like the way that people look in Pixar movies. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's telling that they have really focused on like creatures and animals and stuff, because I have always found the people to be kind of generic, but Elio kind of solves that by having all these like really inventive and creative like creature designs and stuff like that. And it's like I the more that I kind of sit with that movie, it's really sitting well with me, and it is such a shame that it has not done well, because I think, as we will talk about with Domi Shi, like she is a really like amazing voice within Pixar. Elio kind of feels like and Turning Red to a certain extent as well, like feels like it was made by someone who grew up watching Pixar, but
Yes.
has a lot of not just other kind of reference points, but also just wants to kind of push what Pixar can be. Because I think we kind of see this with like Studio Ghibli, when a studio kind of goes on for a while and the head people kind of leave or do other things or whatever, and the identity is kind of put in question. And it's like, well, what is Pixar? Is it just all the sequels, or is it just really bad metaphors about the elements being different races?
Well,
I guess
it's pretty even. I mean, you got like your fire people, you got your water people. I felt very represented by Claude, my favorite character. By Claude, the character from Elemental, who they really tried to sell.
Elemental just really feels like what anyone thinks of a Pixar movie as, like just
It's a real Mad Lib situation.
exactly.
Like,
Yes, thank you.
they're just like two people of different elements end up becoming an unlikely pair, and they go on an adventure to fix infrastructure.
yes, it's and which is such a disaster, and like
Yeah.
compared to the stakes of this movie or a movie like Luca, where it's like, I don't know, the goal's to get a Vespa. Everyone knows that the greatest goal in life is to get a Vespa, and then and do a triathlon, which of course involves eating spaghetti because it's in
Right.
Italy, and
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what's so fascinating. You're talking about all the risks that Pixar takes. It was a real risk for them to make a movie featuring Italians. Very prominently. I
really
wouldn't have done it.
to also feature another character named Guido in an Italian setting, which is like, okay, guys.
For the record, I really enjoy I really enjoy Luca, and I think particularly it does capture like the very Sicilian specifically kind of perspective in a really interesting way. Frustrating thing about Pixar is like they used to really foster their talent, like their new incubating talent, like Domi Shi did Bao previously to any of this.
Yes.
And even like Ilya was a whole thing where like she came in and saved that movie, because originally it was in production. Like if you see that first trailer, it looks so different from like the final movie.
Oh, really?
Like
Okay.
a lot of redesigned stuff, a lot of like just restructuring of stuff apparently. Even the Luca director, I forgot his name, but he also did a great short that I believe was in front of Brave about like the kid and his father fishing, and it's like the moon or whatever.
Oh, La Luna. Yes.
La Luna. Great short.
Enrico Casarosa,
Oh,
who is doing it was just announced that he was doing the Pixar movie coming out in 2027 called Gatto, about just like a black cat.
And they're using a very interesting technique that's kind of like more of a blend of 2D.
Yes, and I think
Right.
it's the thing about like these latest ones, like I would include Elio in this, but Luca, Turning Red, that they are not going for the photorealistic thing that Disney has been going for, but also not going for the kind of like generic CG look. Like I see a lot of like on Instagram, it'll be like, this basketball team, if they were Pixar characters or something like that, like you see a lot of those. And so like
Right.
there is this kind of acknowledgement almost that like this style is, there's a homogeny, I think, with this style. I think like, but like Bird has obviously been able to do that because he's a fucking freak, and Domi Shi has been able to do that because, as we'll talk about, like the influences going into Turning Red and going into like her animation is so weird. And like when I watched Bao, I remember like just being like, this is so strange and so crazy. And yeah, also just a kind of sidebar here, but like I feel like that kind of fostering of new talent you get rid of that when you don't have shorts in front of all the movies anymore.
100%. That was
What
what I
the
was
hell?
going to get into. I completely agree. That stopped, I believe, with Toy Story 4, because Bao, I think, was the last one. It was like a theatrical short, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And they have not done anything, and I think it's a bummer, especially like even if you do that, where it's like some of the like some of these other characters appear in like a short, like the Toy Story shorts they did around the time of Toy
Mm-hmm.
Story 3. There's a lot of fun ones there. I don't mind even if you continue like and do that, because I think you can still have fun people do interesting shorts. Like I remember there was the one for Wally called Bernie, like the little robot who's like outside fixing stuff. Like little
Mm-hmm.
shorts like that that are like
Yes.
cute and work within like the universe, but it's not like a whole sequel. I wouldn't mind that either. Like I'd much rather see The Incredibles on a small mission in a short rather than like a full movie at this point, quite frankly. I
Yeah. No,
yeah
100%.
yeah I feel like removing the shorts is a big problem with that. They've done some stuff for Disney Plus that's good. There was like the yarn one. I forgot what it's called. That was kind of coming from like they did a brief kind of like we're making stuff for Disney Plus.
I feel like that also kind of got rid of it too. Of like, oh, well, now
No,
we have streaming, so we can toss them
that's
onto there.
I mean, it's a major fucking problem with the three movies that came out in 2020 that were put directly on streaming.
Mm.
But yeah, it's just weird. Like to wrap up at least like the Pixar specific conversation, you mentioned the whole thing about like the boys' club and then all that stuff. After Lasseter left, I think they really wanted to intimate that they were trying to like turn a new leaf. They got Pete Docter, I believe, to replace him, who's made
Mm-hmm.
some great Pixar movies. But I think it's a
Yes.
combination of like it's that weird double-edged sword. The whole gimmick with Pixar was like they make great stories. They make like these
Mm-hmm.
family films that really feel like they're for the whole family and really just like will well up the hearts of like the oldest and youngest person in the audience. But then when you have also that become like a big fucking moneymaker, then you have the position, especially where you have like someone like Pete Docter, who I think has like done some great stuff directorially. But under his supervision, there's definitely been like a weird kind of thing where it's clear that like someone doesn't work in as a management as much as they do like creatively. But when you have
Mm.
seniority in this company and you have this kind of like you're mentioning this reputation, it feels like a lot of factors are really trying to be balanced in a lot of these Pixar movies, and it just feels like they almost have too many like spinning plates. Like I think if
Yes.
Pixar maybe kind of decrease their output so they aren't making a movie every single year almost and just kind of like focused. Like at the same time, I'm curious about I don't know if you've heard about the upcoming one Hoppers.
Yeah, Hoppas.
Hoppers, which is from Daniel Chong, who previously created We Bare Bears, a great television show. I've seen a lot of episodes, a very fun show, and it's basically like Avatar but with beavers.
That sounds good.
Yeah, great.
Yes. It's the frustrating thing. Yeah, it's that they have these guys like Casarosa or Domishi or bringing in Daniel Chong. Like they have these people who clearly want to do like, no, Pixar doesn't need to just be these same kind of stories, these same almost like it's very formulaic, literally it's like a formula. Like they just kind of plug these things in, these characters into the Pixar algorithm or whatever, and you get a movie, you get a story, and it's like we get with this movie. Like, no, you can do something completely different and completely weird, because I think for a while when we were growing up in the kind of heyday of Pixar, they were kind of known as like the weird kind of animation studio, at least in the United States, obviously, right? Like I think about all the time the fact that a movie like Ratatouille has become this like universally beloved masterpiece. And I watched that movie recently, and I kind of was like, if you recount the plot of this movie out loud, you sound like an insane human being.
Right.
But it's the thing about Pixar that they are able to sort of harness this weirdness, and there's still elements of that, not elemental,
No.
but there's elements of that in Pixar still. But right, like you said, like the moneymaker is not, unfortunately, for some reason, is not Elio. It is an Inside Out 2. It is making another Toy Story movie. It's difficult, but like we'll get into with this movie, when you get something like this that is so creative and so like unique within Pixar, it feels just amazing to get.
Yeah, which we'll just jump into now. Let's finally jump into Turning Red.
Is it on? I'm Maylin Lee. I wear what I want, say what I want. Also, I'm a red panda.
Do you know how dangerous this is?
Just trust me on this. My whole life I've been a perfect little mermaid.
People have all kinds of sides to them, May.
Maybe I like this new me.
Literally goosebumps.
Disney and Pixar's Turning Red, rated PG. In theaters February 9th.
So, Turning Red came out March 11th, 2022. As we mentioned, not in theaters, but on Disney+. It was the 25th feature film from Pixar. Their first feature film solely directed by a woman. Took a little bit. Yeah, and then it was originally meant for a theatrical release, but it got rescheduled because it was the Omicron outbreak happened in like late 2021, early 2022. So they ended up just pivoting very late to Disney+. Though the film did get a limited theatrical release on February 9th, 2024, along with Soul and Luca, which has a similar thing, which, you know, the history of COVID, like, theatrical shuffling is very tied to Pixar, in that Onward opened, like, the week the theaters shut down. It was the last movie I saw in theaters for about 15 months, I believe. What a great way to end that run.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the Soul, obviously, that came out, like, in December 2020. I get it, like, having some Disney Plus, it worked, because I watched it with my family on Disney Plus on Christmas. Like, it at least got, like, people to watch that movie, because they didn't have anything else. 2021, Luca, that was, like, summer. It could have reasonably come out. I don't know how well it would have done, maybe at that particular time when things were a bit wonky with, like, theatrical releases.
But what a great summer release that would have been.
Yeah, especially, like, a chill summer hangout, right? Even though I don't know if you could do, like, Happy Meal toys as well around Luca. I mean, you got, like, little, like, fish creatures, but just having, like, Luca on a Vespa.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I played with them so hard if I was, like, a little kid. Just like, look, mommy, I can make the Vespa go!
Not to go back to Luca, but Ercole is one of the greatest Pixar characters, like, I think. Like, I just love everything.
Is that the villain kid?
Yeah, the shitty, like, kid
him.
who's just like, everybody loves me and they hate you. He is just, like, I love everything about him. And, like, I understand, again, like, yes, COVID releases and everything. I just don't think I can ever forgive Pixar and Disney in general for not putting this movie into theaters and then
100%.
going,
Yeah.
Lightyear? You guys want this?
Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah, I think this one in particular, because, like, even around that time, like, what? The Scream movie came out, right? Scream 5 Cream. And did very well, like, in January when Omicron was, like, raging. Like, I don't think that would have, like, really diminished, especially... I'll say this much, I don't have any children of my own, neither does Bryan, in case that wasn't clear from us doing this show over the course of the last 50-something episodes. With this particular movie, shout out to Adam Thomas, co-host of Double Edge Double Bill, that was on this feed. He's talked many times about, like, his kid loves Turning Red, his little girl loved Turning Red, especially when it came out originally. It's one that's kind of, like, stuck with her. And I get it, because this movie feels especially, like, you know, we're also, neither Bryan or I, we're... either came from Canada, were teenage girls, or of any sort of Asian ancestry. But I just love that, like, this movie's so specific and has such a specific perspective that, like, even as, like, someone who in theory is, like, completely diametrically opposite to the audience that this movie is, like, aiming at, I think it's really fucking funny and sweet and lived in, and just, like, a wonderful film about being, like, a young girl dealing with, like, being a perfectionist with her parents, and then also wanting to be with her friends and wanting to do, like, things that a young girl who's going through maybe some changes would want to do, like ogle a bunch of boys in a boy band as they dance and sing in front of them. It's all just, like, it's very endearing and sweet, and it's just, like, I don't care if I'm, like, not the exact right specific, like, audience. It fucking rules still. It's a great-ass movie.
Luca and Turning Red, even though they were Disney Plus releases, like, amongst, I say younger audiences, like, around my age and younger, really love these movies. And I think, sure, part of it is because they were on Disney Plus and you can just, like, rewatch them over and over again. Both of them, in this movie in particular, feel so modern. again, we talked about like the kind of like Pixar formula that is kind of like gotten a bit stale over the years. Like watching this movie last night, the first like 5 minutes of it are full of just so much creativity and so much energy that it is just like, whoa, holy fucking shit, what is this? And like, we are the perfect people to talk about this movie because
Right,
we're not
exactly.
teenage girls who, you know, turn into giant pandas.
We did turn into other animals, but not panthers, I believe.
Yeah.
It's a different story. Yeah.
I will say, and you know, I got this also part of it from watching the, I believe it's called Embracing the Panda, the making of Turning Red. The sort of story of this movie being about like a first generation immigrant like child growing up in America is very relevant to me, and this sort of idea of like being caught between honoring your family, your past or whatever, but also you're in this new country where there are boy bands and like yes, boys and stuff like that. Like that is something that I think I personally really connected to with this movie. And another thing that is so like, again, almost like revolutionary for Pixar is the fact that this movie like not only is talking about a lot of like issues related to like puberty and specifically like female puberty obviously, but it's very horny. You know, like it is a really like, yes, like ogling at boys. Like one of the funniest moments in the entire movie is when as the panda she walks by like 7-Eleven store or whatever and just goes like AWOOGA.
Yep, taking it back from them Tex Avery wolves, baby.
It's so like amazing, and it's like, yes, it feels so specific to not just like the early 2000s, but like there's such a specificity with this being like Toronto, which
Yes.
is a place I've never been to, but you feel so much of that in the movie. And it, like, I don't know, like there are Pixar movies that have felt this specific a little bit, but not in the way that this movie does necessarily. Like a lot of Pixar movies don't tend to be this modern, this contemporary in a lot of ways, and I it's something I really love about this movie.
Well, yeah, as someone who not only lived through 2002, but has very clear memories of 2002. This movie has like such an accurate stamp on like that particular time, like particularly the obsession with boy bands. What do you think of when you think of like a late 90s, early 2000s boy band? What band do you think of?
NSYNC, obviously.
Right.
Because I remember vaguely the early 2000s, like a little bit. But the boy band I would have grown up around was like One Direction.
Right.
But I do remember like, obviously NSYNC. There's what's the other big one that I'm like forgetting the name of?
There's a big one, like the two like the rivals, kind of like the Coke and Pepsi of this era of boy bands. They were not men, and they were from certain areas in like a town that might not be like a front road.
The Backstreet Boys, yes, of course. Yes.
The Front Road Men, though, my favorite boy band, really.
Again, as someone who vaguely remembers a lot of like the like aesthetics of that, like just seeing Four Town in this movie, the boy band in that like all white getup, it's so specific. What I also just love about this movie is it is very much about like feelings as an early teenager, and just it kind of knows how silly and at least at the beginning, the way that May is kind of very overconfident, and yet it is not talking down to its characters. It is really like earnestly going along with them in their like as they make stupid videos and as they like love. I mean, like the opening scene where like May points the flyer and like the light comes out and like knocks them all back. It's just like it captures like that, again, what I imagine that feeling is of being a teenage girl. And like I love the line where she's like, this is what real men look like, and then that's when that happens. And it's just the energy that this movie has is it's so infectious in that like the way that like just kind of good pop music can be. yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, and I think that it just gets certain things right. Where like I'll say this also is like was not obviously I didn't grow up a young teenage girl, but I have younger sisters, particularly a sister who's like just a year younger than me. So I did at least catch a lot of like these cultural elements, and especially their obsession with the boy band element of it. I remember very distinctly when we were kids, they loved both NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, but there was the certain point when they were specifically into Backstreet Boys. There was a whole thing where my grandmother made these like Christmas stockings, where the whole thing was she would like hot glue things that meant something to us. Like I had a little R2D2 on there, or a little like pin from Disney World, stuff like that. And there was a point where she got buttons that had the different Backstreet Boys on it. Like they had a little like, oh, here's AJ, here's Nick Carter, here's this person, whatever. And they definitely like fought over. It was like Nick Carter and I think AJ. Like they were the two that they argued over. They're like, oh, but Tommy, you need to get one too. And I'm like, I like Backstreet Boys songs, but I was not into it as much. But it was such a thing that like I had to also put. I think Howie Duro is the one I had on mine. I don't know. It was just there out of like contractual obligation. But at the same time, I didn't hate that music either. Like I fucking love like the Everybody song that they do with like the fucking cool music video where they're all monsters and shit. Like that music still like when it works, it fucking hits. It still really works. And yeah, the Four Town stuff is like it's a perfect parody that's also very sincere. And we should shout out the music done by Billie Eilish and Phineas, who was one of the
Two-time Academy Award winners.
Yes, two-time Academy Award winners. Not for this movie, shameful.
I was gonna get into this. Yeah, like I had the fucking. I guess I just looked it up. Nobody Like You. That fucking song is so catchy.
Great.
I had it stuck in my head like all day.
That is the one I would also nominate.
It is so
yes,
great.
Yeah.
And I mean, to get like best original song with respect is kind of a joke at the
What?
Oscars. But this is the year that Natu Natu won. So
Yeah.
it's a little hard to knock it, but like I think like Diane Warren was nominated this year, so it's like, come on, we could have. Not that Billie Eilish and Phineas need a third Oscar, but like these songs are just so good, and yeah, like I love. Speaking of the boy band stuff, I just love the kind of like I forget when it is when she's going through like the different members where it's like he knows French and he's like sensitive or whatever, and then it's like and these other two guys are talented, I guess. Like
yeah,
this sort of like acknowledgement that
there's filler
always
members. Yes, yeah,
yes, and like a lot of the kind of like jokes are just really funny too. When like the mom is like, "Why are they called Four Town when there's 5 of them?" Which great question, but it's also just one of those kind of like boy band the sort of the boy band things that is just I really like
especially
that.
when you get into like the other ones, the also ran ones like 98 Degrees and shit like that, where it's like, okay, guys, I don't know what we're doing here. This is not like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. It just like it works. It just like instantaneously like iconic, whatever. There's an asterisk within NSYNC that also is iconic now. That's exactly what makes sense. The other those other like bottom feeder bands, like they just never quite got like that kind of stage presence, which is very adamantly clear in like the way that we see Four Town perform. I think it's so wonderful. But we've been going on about like that. That's like more toward the end of the film. Let's talk a bit about Turning Red in general. If you have not seen this movie, one, stop. Get Disney Plus. Do it for this. Do like a free trial. Watch Turning Red, and you can cancel whatever. Fuck Disney after that.
Well, watch Andor.
That's Andor. Yes, of course. Yes, there's a couple things you might want to watch, and then cancel your subscription. Turning Red. Basically, it's the story of this young woman named May, voiced by Rosalie Cheng, who's a Chinese Canadian girl who's growing up in 2002 in Toronto, Canada. And she lives with her mother and father, who also, as their day job, run this temple, this Chinese that's located in Toronto. And her parents are like, her mother in particular is very kind of domineering, very strict, kind of helicopter parent. But May like really honors her mother, loves her mother. By the way, Ming voiced by Sandra Oh. And May ends up, dividing her time between like being very dutiful to her parents and hanging out with her 4 friends. Miriam, Priya and Abby, who are wonderful in the film. Their dynamic is so great. They're fast friends. They love each other so much. They're all like 13-year-old girls who, have certain obsessions, including Four Town, this boy band. After, as she's turning 13 and starting to like have some changes with her body, the normal kind of puberty stuff for May that she's got to deal with, particularly turning into a red panda, as her family is wont to do at this particular time. All the women in her family have this particular ritual ever since, like, it dates back centuries when her ancestors end up being like, I like red pandas, I would like to turn into one. And now her entire family line has to go through a ritual in order to maintain turning into a giant red panda who's like, I don't know, about like 7 foot tall, and very furry, and she's obviously dealing with that and a lot of her general hormones, and she wants to like, try and like honor her family and do as much as she can with like, this ritual that will like kind of like make her a bit more normal again, but she's also kind of likes turning into a red panda, ends up using that red panda element to get some money so they can go to Four Town's concert, even though things end up having scheduling conflicts due to people misreading Toronto and Toledo on a fucking sign, which I love.
What even is Toledo?
Yeah, Abby, played by Hyden Park, Priya, played by Myrai Ramakrishna, I apologize to mispronounce that, and Ava Morse plays Miriam. Those three, I think that dynamic with them and May is so fantastic. I just think it like really sells the heart of this movie, which is to say there are these 4 kids who do have like a clear, deep emotional connection as friends that's like very resonant, but also they like goofing off. They like looking at boys. They like, singing Four Town songs, doing the beatboxing thing. Like, all that dynamic stuff is established wonderfully right at the top of this movie. That I'm just like, I feel this weird, like, especially watching it this time, and maybe just as I'm getting older, like, a weird paternal vibe of just like, you kids, you're so adorable. Go out there. Keep on going. It's so endearing. I love these kids.
The group is great. Priya is my favorite just because the like deadpan like delivery and like look on her face that she has is just so funny. Yep. And the fact that it like, the animation in this movie I think is incredible. We'll talk about it, but the fact that the deadpan kind of look stays even in the emotional moments of the movie, even in like the funny moments, it's really great. I love the kind of like anime like introduction they get when like their names go up on the screen and all like the color pops in the screen and everything like that. It's like it just does such a great job at like presenting what their dynamic is like. Each of them have like distinct looks, distinct personalities. What I like at the beginning is that the other 3 of her friends are all ogling Devin. Yes. Who is also just such a funny character at the grocery store or whatever, the
like
little
the
7-Eleven,
kind of like 7-Eleven place,
yeah. But she is the only one who's kind of like, what's the big deal? Like this, and that's when she pulls out her Four Town thing. Like, this is what real men are like, and I don't know, just that kind of like, again, a thing that we do not have the most necessarily a view of, but just that like thing of like the other people are into boys but she's kind of not, and then like the scene where she is drawing in her room is just is so
wonderful,
funny, and again like feels so subversive for Pixar. And like when she turns into the giant red panda, which is kind of a metaphor for a lot of things, but
yeah,
while it is happening in the morning, it is very directly tied to like menstruation. And Ming, the mom, like references like, oh, okay, well, we knew this was coming. Like that's what she thinks is happening. She doesn't think it's the red panda.
Did your red bloom or whatever? Like, yeah, it's something like that. It was very funny.
And like obviously when she eventually goes to the school, which like this movie captures so many of like the worst fears of being like a middle schooler, where it's like your parents show up to your school and she's like behind the tree and is like, you forgot your pads. And it's like, again, for a company like Disney and Pixar who is very risk averse when it comes to a lot of this kind of stuff. And again, like, yes, the boys club thing, like, to be this openly about like female issues. This is a like female centric film in many different ways. I don't know, like, again, it feels so subversive, and it's also just makes for some of the best jokes in the entire movie, I think. And it's so well handled.
There's a whole point when, like, she's doing this drawing of, like, because she's starting to draw Devin, and he's like, well, you know, like, he's not that cute. I mean, his shoulders are kind of cool, and he's got some muscles. And then she draws him, like, caressing her at one point, and then also the best, when Sandra Oh's Ming ends up taking the drawings, like, going, like, you perverts, I can't believe you would do this. Look at what you're manipulating her into doing. And then it's, like, the fact that it's him as a merman just is so fucking specific once again.
Yes.
Just this weird trend. Like, I remember that, like, online in, like, a weird place where you would see, like, clearly, like, young girls had published stuff like DeviantArt or Tumblr, where it's just like, oh, this person, but as a merman? My crush is a merman, one slur or whatever, as a fucking merman or some shit. It's just this weird, funny, like, specific detail that would just come from, like, a young girl who's, like, clearly, like, kind of, like, she knows that she has, like, attraction to the opposite sex, but is like, I don't know how to translate that, so he's like a merman, because he's got, like, the top part with the abs, but not anything below. It's so funny, and it has, like, there's so much layers to it, but it's also just a really funny visual.
It's great. It's great when, like, her mom, like, opens the notebook and is like, oh, what's this, your homework? And then just, like, her flipping through it being like, oh no, what is, like, her being horrified of it.
To you?
Yes. And just
especially like the merman. I want to imagine, like, her seeing the merman picture and her interpolation of that specifically. What does that mean, Ming?
Again, like, yes, the scene at the grocery store, like, where she confronts Devin. The lines I love is like, what are you, 30? He's like, 17.
Exactly.
And just the, like, the dramatic, again, like, the style of this movie, where when she, like, throws the paper onto the ground, it, like, zooms out, it has, like, the lines around her, like, it is so, again, going against the, like, photorealistic thing that Pixar has kind of done a lot. And the way it kind of, like, heightens these things with it's very anime inspired. Early on, there's, like, kind of a Ghibli reference where, like, the dad is cooking the food and it looks fucking so good. Like, I did see that Domishi had a few of, like, the Miyazaki, like, books in her home in the documentary. Yes. So, like, clearly she loves Ghibli.
There's also a lot of, like, some of the other, right, like, particularly I noticed a lot of Sailor Moon.
Yes, yeah.
I watched so much of with my sisters. Like, loved that fucking show, and that is exactly what I would, like, watch from, like, the moment I was ready for school to when we left school, like, at, like, 6:30 in the morning or some shit. I watched so much fucking Sailor Moon that way, and you can tell, like, especially that one bit where May is, like, jumping in midair and, like, flying through the air, and it kind of, like, really elongates on that. So much of, like, that kind of anime influence. Like, it's very clear. But also it feels, once again, very distinctive and very cartoony. I would even say there's a big thing early on, like when she walks through the temple for the first time, and she says hello to the two statues and calls them Bart and Lisa. There's so much Simpsons in this fucking movie. It is so, like, the way that Toronto feels almost like a Springfield in its own way, even though I love the color scheme of this movie being very colorful, bright, all over the place, and in terms of, like, its color palette. But then having, like, a lot of these, like, wonderful interactions, like, a lot of the stuff with Ming watching May, it's at school, feels so, like, very Simpsons-y. Particularly any of the interactions with the security guard guy. It's like, hello, ma'am, you want to go to the front? It's like, get away from me! My daughter goes to this school!
Yeah, and the kind of, like, joke a minute sort of feel of The Simpsons as well. This movie has that element a bit, like... An issue I've had with a lot of the recent Pixar movies is that I think, like, Elio is not devoid of this necessarily, but, like, the jokes feel like they're the things that are targeting, like, the adults. They're very, like, adult focused jokes where, like, oh, the adults will get it, but you kids, like, that doesn't mean anything to you. Like, there's a lot of that in Pixar movies that I kind of find, like, it just doesn't work for me. Like, it just kind of feels like that's the stuff where we can include the parents, And this movie doesn't have that. Like, all the jokes feel so specific. Like, we're talking about, like, just this kind of, like, the merman drawing and just, like, the exaggerated feeling. I love the kind of, like, I think it happens a few times early in the movie where May's embarrassed and it, like, zooms in. It gives her, like, a light on her face, and we see, like, all the beads of sweat, like, fall on her face.
Don't look at the book,
just,
don't look at the book, don't look at the book.
yeah, like, all of the jokes are just so specific and so expressive and creative. It doesn't feel like it's going for those kind of, like, cheap parent jokes or something like that.
I agree, yeah. This movie, it feels much more like in that family kind of fashion, where it is just like, I think anybody could watch this movie and find it entertaining, really. That wide variety of different, like, jokes and bits that, like, I think could appeal to anybody. Just there's a great cartoony timing that I think has been missing from a lot of Pixar movies over the last, like, decade or so, as you mentioned with, like, the house style thing. And I have heard some people, this is a part of animation discourse I don't like. Some people compare this and even, like, Domishi's other work to, like, the CalArt style. I don't know if you know this discourse thing in animation.
No.
Like, there's a whole thing, from what I understand at least, of, like, people who are like, these very typical kind of CalArt style shows, and a lot of people would point to stuff like the sort of Cartoon Network shows from around, like, the 2010s, like Steven Universe or Craig of the Creek, which, I mean, there's, like, some similarities, I guess, to, like, this and some of those things in terms of, like, particularly the mouths. I feel there's, like, kind of a similarity, but I think that's, like, just because there's, like, some of that similar elements doesn't mean that, like, I don't think this movie feels very distinctive at all. I think it's one of the better examples of, like, kind of translating almost a zany 2D-ish style to CG animation and having, I think, like, its own interesting creative voice. And also, I would say Domishi's like, work here and in Elio, I don't think feels extremely similar at all. There's, like, some stylistic things maybe, but, like, the designs don't look exactly the same by any stretch.
No, yeah, like, I think they were talking about this in the documentary that, like, not just May's design, but, like, the kind of design for all these characters is kind of, like, kind of shorter, kind of, like, squat, kind of chunkier, kind of, like,
yes.
And Elio, like, again, like, has so many different designs. Like, I love, like, the like, the little, like sort of helper robot AI thing that's, like, following Elio around. Like, that is such a unique design. And the thing is, with that kind of, like, Cartoon Network style in this, like, they're just really expressive, and they feel like they feel like they're made by people who kind of realize that there are no rules with animation necessarily. Like, you can break, like, there's elements of this movie that are quote unquote photorealistic and look really, really good in that traditional Pixar way, of course, but there's a lot of 2D elements, which I think they talked about in the documentary. Like, they're using elements of 2D animation with the CG. Like, it doesn't look as kind of bland as a lot of other Pixar movies.
Yes.
Like, there is a lot of weird creative things. I mean, it ends with a fucking kaiju battle, basically. Like, it is like it, and obviously, like, I would love to see what Domishi makes next, but I agree with you. Like, yeah, this and Elio just they don't feel like they've been made by the same person, and yet there is the sense that, like, her voice kind of translates through those movies in a way. She has a certain style, I think, which is why I'm so excited to get more from her. Like, I want her to become, like, you know, an Andrew Stanton, like one of these guys at Pixar who can just kind of, like, oh, what are they working on next? What's their next project gonna be? Like, it's really exciting.
I think the most you see out of that is particularly with, I'm not gonna say much about this character because I love the kind of reveals and stuff in Elio, but the sort of slug buddy of Elio in the movie, who is about halfway through the movie, feels very Domishi. And I think of, like, the timing things we're talking about, a lot of the fun, like, character bits, and even, like, the jokes that feel like we're, you know, just taking the reality of this character seriously, but still just having, like, squash and stretch kind of, like, fun to it. I really like that. I feel like Domishi, like, has a lot of, like, vibrancy in her animation, even just, like, the distinct kind of stylistic stuff you're mentioning, like, just those four girls, our four sort of leads of the movie, those four kids, all look so different. And it's not just like a diversity thing necessarily. I think it's so fun seeing them contrast with each other, with just their body types. Like, you got like May, who's like kind of like the median of the group, but even like Abby is shorter, kind of has like almost a pear shape. That I think is like really funny, especially the more that she gets like upset and angry about things. The way she turns on a dime is so funny in this fucking movie. But then like Priya, kind of like having you mentioned the deadpan kind of look, and then even like Miriam is like slightly taller than them and a bit more gangly, but in a way that like once again they all just like feel like they contrast with each other visually in a fun way, while also being like different representations of different groups. It's like you can have like both, and it's not like it isn't as performative as what you've been talking about with some of the other representation in Pixar films. Like in one of the more egregious examples, like Onward, with like the cop that was played by Lena Waithe, and it's like the first gay character in a Pixar film, and she references that she has like a female partner, and that's it.
Yeah. And in the documentary, they do make a lot of like reference to like, oh, this is the first time that we've had a all-female like head team at Pixar, which again like is great, but also like, oh, that is just a little bit like, ugh. But you really do feel that like there is a more of a female voice in just the way that it also treats like the mother character, you know, like it does present her as like overbearing and stuff. I love her design though, where like I think Domishi mentioned that like she wanted her to feel like a very like proper like 60s like Chinese woman with like the thin eyebrows and stuff like that. But there's also like a bit of like working girl in there, which is just like, what? Right. Like, okay, that's really fascinating. And I love like a lot of the moments that she has. Like one of my favorites is when she's complaining of like, oh, how dare she talk to her mother this way? This is like when children should respect their mother. And then the husband picks up the phone and is like, oh, it's your mom. And she's like, I'm not here. And like hides and is just like so, couch, yeah. It's so great in the way that it kind of like has a lot of these different perspectives. And again, as you were recounting the plot of the movie, the stakes of this movie are small. Yeah. You know, like a lot of these Pixar movies, like, you know, I like Inside Out, but like it has a lot of like big stakes for like the mind, kind of, you know, the mind of Riley or whatever, and like a lot of them have like Adventure Onward is like a quest type of movie. Like they have these kind of like big, very ambitious themes. This one feels ambitious just because of how expressive a lot of the animation is. Yeah. But the plot of the movie, yeah, is a girl who is going through puberty and wants to go see a boy band, but her parents are very strict. Like, that is so quaint compared to like the other stuff that they have done, and I love how earnestly they treat that. Like when the plan gets put into place that they're going to use the red panda to charge people at her school.
That feels like a fucking plot that like Bart would do at school. Yes, this feels like the best like version of like if The Simpsons was just like about Springfield Elementary. It feels like it would be like what a lot of this movie is in a really endearing way.
Yes. Yeah, just how earnestly it treats, like, I love the sort of footage when they're making like the videos on the camcorder. Oh, which is so specific and it's so fun. And I even love just the way that they capture like the other kind of kids at her school, like Tyler, where it's like we all kind of knew a Tyler, like a kid who's like very arrogant, who's rich, who's like kind of an asshole, but also like secretly a four townie. Like he like has these, you know, and as someone who, again, growing up in the early 2000s, like one of the reasons I was not into like boy bands and stuff is like that was girl music, and I don't know, there's something about that also just feels so, it is a great joke, but it is also kind of like there's something kind of real there that I really, really love, and I think it's like so, yeah, it works about this movie so well.
No, I love that too. Yeah, I think the fact that it's like it's a small stakes thing, but that it means the world to them is exactly what I think Pixar needs to focus on more. Is the fact that it's like it's the stakes that like matter so much to these individual characters, even if in the grand scheme of things, it's like, oh, like, this movie has a bit of, like, kaiju action and city destruction, but it's all, once again, just bore out of, like, we want to go to this concert and become women, which is my favorite thing. Every time it's like, we're gonna go to that concert, girls, and come out women. It's so funny every time they do it.
And like, again, that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Like, the movie knows how silly they sound, and yet it is so earnestly engaging with their emotions and like what they feel. And I think that's what, like, that is the specificity that like comes from having a real like voice behind all of this stuff, like that. Yeah,
it doesn't feel fucking generic. That's the thing that, like, whenever this comes up about, like, oh, why do we have to have like these different voices or whatever, isn't that like a diversity hire or whatever, all this other bullshit. It's like, when you have stuff like that, especially in entertainment, it allows for just movies that on the most selfish basic level are like new and interesting and don't feel like the same goddamn movie that, like, you've been forced to watch or you have watched over the course of your fucking life. The Pixar movies, like you're mentioning, they're kind of like being on those rails. When you don't have that, you get like new creative stuff that on a selfish level is just like entertaining to watch. This movie, incredibly entertaining. So many great visual like bits and jokes. Like, I love the montage when they're trying to like make all this money off her being the red panda, and you have a lot like, oh, let's trade off merchandise, or the bit where they all like come out of the bathroom stall like, hey, look, here's our t-shirts and here's this and shit like that. It's just it really, like, it's so fun. Like, it only really come from somebody who like you mentioned is younger and has a bit of like this the specific perspective that like we don't have, but it's still like so fun. And especially in a way where like I'm slightly younger than these girls would be, like, in 2002. I would have been, like, a bit younger, kind of like elementary school age, but, like, on my way to middle school. And I just relate so much to that kind of thing of, like, seeing someone who's, like, just slightly older than you, who has nothing figured out, and you're like, man, those girls are adults. Like, they keep referring themselves as adults, because what was it, on the bus transit unit? You're listed as an adult at 13 for Toronto, which is so specific and so funny. Feeds into like the same thing like when I was a kid, and I'd see like girls who like were old, just a couple years older than me, but they were teenagers. I'm like, they got it all figured out. Look at them. They're just like a real adult women. Like that kind of thing, that kind of mentality, it feels very genuinely like kid-like and universal, but also has a specificity around it.
It also still feels like a Pixar movie in the sort of like ethos of what Pixar is supposed to represent, with having these kind of like very outlandish concepts, like, yeah, she's a girl but she turns into a giant red panda, and like Luca has a similar thing of like they're fish but they go into land and they become people, and like they have these kind of outlandish things. And even this movie, when it quote unquote, like, I don't want to say it falls into the Pixar traps, like the one I mentioned earlier was like, at the end of the second act, there has to be a big fight that ensues where the characters sort of separate, and when they're at their lowest point, that is when they figure out the lesson of the movie. And it happens in so many of these movies, even some of the best ones. But when it happens in this movie, it feels so natural. And I think there's, again, like, it's part of that thing that it earns that because the movie's so fun that, like, after the Tyler's party,
right,
where her mom shows up and is like finds out that she's been doing this, like, the great thing that happens in that scene is that like her mom blames her friend of like, oh, you've been brainwashing her to do this, and just the kind of understated thing that like May doesn't speak up, like she just kind of like she allows her mom to kind of like believe this.
She doesn't like outright lie, but she doesn't say anything, and just like really it hurts her friend so dearly because they're like, just like, you telling her that this was your idea and you want to do this, and it feels so believable, especially like a weird thing that happened like at a party you were at, like with a bunch of other kids your age, and like something weird happened and like all the parents come over, like that stuff too, where like his parents are talking to Ming and are just going like, I can't believe your daughter's reckless, she's wild, like she's never done this before, I'm so sorry. That feels so real, those kind of elements, so that like when, we have the silly shit happen, more like I said, this movie ends in like a kaiju race from Toronto to the fucking giant dome or whatever. It feels like it's really rooted in emotion. in a way, especially like the way that builds up too, where it's like the whole Toledo thing happens, and it's like, oh, but it's the same night as the ritual, and I can't let my parents down, and then Tyler's down there like, hey, come down here, you want to earn your money, you gotta like play around with this, and you can believe why May would be like so distraught by that, and she's like in the middle of so much, and then she pounces on him in a way that like a kid would, but she doesn't know her own strength because she's like so in her own head. It feels like so earned, like we're talking about. It feels like very genuine to like lead to like these people being separated off, and then allows us to have other people introduced. Like this is afterward. It's like when the family comes in. We have to talk about that family.
Oh, the aunts.
The aunts, so good. But yeah, that whole like build, like you're mentioning, it feels actually earned and not like a mechanical thing.
Yeah, and it's the thing that like the good Pixar movies do. Like Monsters Inc. does a very similar thing where Mike and Sully get separated, but it earns those emotions. And I think, again, by building up the kind of friendship, like I love the scene when her friends like sneak into her room where she's been quarantined basically, like in her room for like a week or whatever, and they have this kind of like thing of like, no, we love you, like whether you're a giant panda or not. Like it's really great. I also love the recurring bit that her mom doesn't like Miriam.
Yes.
Where she's like, that girl is odd. And during that scene, she's like...
She talks about, like, Priya and Abby at one point, like, well, they seem intelligent enough, but that Miriam, I don't know.
And then in this scene, she's like, wait, guys, you have to go. Like, my mom already doesn't like you, Miriam. She's like, she doesn't? Like,
right.
It's this really great, like, quick joke that I love. But... yeah, should we talk about the ants? Because their introduction is also just...
I mean, I want to, but I also want to shout out, while we were briefly on the Tyler thing, or I think this happened... yeah, it happens at the Tyler thing. Just the one thing while the aunts are talking with each other. I think it happens right before the party, actually, is a thing. But yeah, they're talking. And then it cuts over to the party, and all the kids are, like, seated. We're like, boys on one side, girls on the other side, and the electric slide is playing in the background. I've lived that moment, Bryan. Too many times when I was a kid. Just that specific, like, that needle drop is like, and then later on, like, they do Bootylicious, which also very distinctly 2002 needle drop. It's on point. But yeah, the aunts, we gotta talk about the aunts, the family, and also the grandmother coming into the fray alongside them. Great introduction to them. Love their designs. The tracksuits, perfect.
Yes.
The fact also they have various different designs. Even like I like that the grandmother looks similar to like Ming, but has just enough distinctive qualities to where like it's not quite there. It's interesting, and especially I just want to also shout out all these different female figures in a Pixar movie, and a real testament that none of these adult female figures in this movie have big dump truck asses. I think really innovative for Pixar.
It really is. It is quite a problem for Pixar, I will say.
I mean, look, I get the impulse, guys, but not every lady has a big dump truck.
All the characters have just, like, amazing design work. Like, but before we talk about the family as well, like, I love, like, the dad.
Shout out Orion Lee, who's great in stuff like...
is it him?
First Cow. Yeah, it's him.
Yes.
I didn't know this until research. Yes, he's very good in his limited amount of vocal work in this movie.
It's a real contrast to, again, like, I like Inside Out, but that movie has a very, like, I don't know, like the joke in that movie that it does with the father, played by Kyle MacLachlan, which is funny.
Right.
But, like, the whole joke that it kind of has is that he is just, like, a father who is, like, just not paying attention, and is very much, like, thinking about, like, football or whatever, which is, like, is that really the best kind of joke here? And this movie has a bit of, like, you can tell that Meg is the more sort of in charge of the relationship, in charge of the household.
Yes.
But I also just love the heart-to-heart that May and her father have.
Yeah.
Like, at the end, and that being this kind of, like, catalyst for her realizing, I say the lesson of the movie. I don't mean to put it as reductive as that, but, like, for her to learn her lesson, basically. And I think I love just how it handles him, and also just, again, that scene where he cooks all the food at the beginning, and, like, you see, like, hit the fog on his glasses, and, like,
it looks badass, and he's like, oh no, I can't see. He's, wonderful character. I 100% agree. That scene where he details to her, just like, look, your mom and I met, and we really loved each other, and your grandmother didn't approve, but your mother just really defended me, and I thought it was such a a real beautiful moment that showed that like she could stand up to her mom and all this other stuff. And I don't feel like that's something that you can't do. I'm very generalizing. There's a really beautiful scene that's so well done.
No, yeah.
And I fucking cry during every time I see this movie. But I'm just a sucker too for like that girl dad shit. I don't know. I'm just a real like, oh, it's so, especially with the Simpsons angle of it too. He kind of feels like a Homer, but like the sweeter Homer. Like that conversation feels like the best scenes with Homer and Lisa in those episodes that make me cry too. Between the two of them, it's got that kind of energy in such a beautiful way, but also very distinctive, separate way that's Domi specific perspective.
Yeah. So I mean, I know we talked a little bit about the aunts,
right? Yeah, I love them. I also love like that the detail of like they have a specific item that like their panda is trapped in, basically.
Yes,
whereas like one has a bracelet, one has a ring, all this other stuff, and then that sequence at the end where they're all like running and they like throw that shit off to the ground and they turn into the pandas. So good, and it's even funnier because once again, when they enter the room, like they are such like kind of frumpy, like they're wearing tracksuits. They're not like in the most like
purse,
very
like the same purse but different color.
Right, very aunt style clothing in such a wonderful way, such a perfect like universal way as well. But and even like also amongst it, we should shout out one of the best living character actors around, James Hong as the elder guy.
Yes,
always love it. Never can turn down seeing some Hong in a movie or hearing him.
He has also one of the funniest lines in the movie that where like they're doing the sort of like chant and May's like, oh, what are they saying? He's like, oh, it's like an ancient like song, like whatever, like it doesn't need to be that. Like I like Tony Bennett personally, but your mom, your grandma, she's from the old school. Like it's and that I mean builds to kind of the great, you know, we'll talk about the finale, but like the great finale being the sort of like Chinese like chanting like song, and then like Four Town playing this sort of great like
Four Town singing.
My apologies.
They performed, Bryan. They helped out that giant kaiju Sandra Oh Red Panda. Okay,
like that kind of meeting of her two sides, basically like helping her in the situation. It's really beautifully done, but yeah, all the stuff with the ants I love, like just obviously their introduction and just the fact that they are like giving her all these presents that they've brought and like feeding her a bunch of food and so stuff like that. Like it is so great, and it captures that kind of like with the grandma character, like how kind of like almost like scary or intimidating like she can be, because she's like the sort of like she's the grandma, she is the like head of all of them basically, and it handles it like so well.
I do want to speak to, we should shout Wu is the name of the grandmother character played by Wei Ching-ho. I think that is an interesting character and perspective to have in this, where it's like we were mentioning, oh, like Sandra Oh Min clearly has like a very tumultuous relationship with her mother, and that kind of like generational, not trauma, but just like conflict that's like been going on in this family for a while. Like this family has this, despite being connected by like the red panda stuff and all these other elements. I think that's so incredibly interesting as a perspective, because obviously in a lot of Pixar movies where you have kind of like the father, son, mother, daughter, any permutation of that kind of relationship, the parent-child dynamic that happens in a lot of these Pixar movies, it tends to be, I think, much more, like you mentioned, kind of like traditional, like the parents of like Riley and Inside Out. I do agree with you, is probably the weakest element of that movie. It definitely shows that like there's sort of like a limited perspective on a lot of Pixar parents at this point, as opposed to like here having like a mom who has this conflict with the grandmother and doesn't want her around, but also is kind of putting that on her own daughter at the same time. There's a lot of complexity to that that's like really interesting, and actually like it feels very real and emotional, but in a way also that like it wouldn't confuse a kid. It's like, oh, the grandma and the mom have like a weird relationship. That's fine. I get that. Like it feels still, it communicates that in a way that like a kid could understand.
Yeah, and I think it's like it gets into like what the panda, like becoming the panda kind of represents, which is like it represents a lot of things. Like we talked about, like it definitely represents like puberty. Like I mean just the scene where she is like, I'm ugly and hairy, and you know, like it captures that feeling so well. But also it is this like, it also definitely represents this kind of like wild side to her. I mean, like, not just the sort of like horny angle. Again, like just the AWOOGA is
Right,
just
yes.
it's so funny. Containing that sort of like more extreme, crazier side of yourself and becoming more reserved, becoming more adult, right? Having to grow up and become like, have responsibilities. You can't be, you can't like stupid pop music. You have to focus on like your schools or whatever. And I like that it isn't just like, I don't mean to just like rag on Inside Out, because there's things I like about Inside Out, but
Yeah.
that movie is very much kind of about one thing, kind of like its metaphor is like for depression or sadness or whatever. Like it's kind of the one thing it has going for it in terms of the metaphor, whereas this one feels so three-dimensional. It feels like it has layers to it. And I love, yes, the idea that like all of these women, including her mom, have had to kind of like not like repress their kind of wild side, repress their emotions necessarily, but have kind of like reserved themselves to that, have kind of said like, I don't let myself get like over emotional or whatever, and like I contain myself. And yeah, like I love the fact that it ends with the mom like finally going like letting her emotion out. And I love that line where the dad references earlier like her panda was big, and like May is like, you didn't tell me it was that big.
Yes.
which
yeah.
is just is so great. And just the fact that this serves also as like a weird like, yes, like kaiju like Godzilla reference where it like tears the roof off of the
Sky Dome, I believe, is what
the
it is.
Sky Dome. And like I love like her joke there where she's just like, why are you people here? Why are you dressed like this? Where are your parents? Like it's
Put some clothes on.
yeah. And yeah, just the way that it like handles this kind of like kaiju battle, but it is them sort of dealing with their emotions in this sort of like fit of like rage and emotion and stuff like that. Like it serves as a really great sort of like metaphor that has a lot of like complexities to it.
Yeah. And it doesn't fall under the weight of its own metaphor, like you're mentioning, like Elemental. Elemental is like, what was it David Simpson's Letterboxd review was like, catastrophic metaphor collapse? It's like, yes, 100%. Where it just is like, the one-to-one is like disastrous, as opposed to here where like the red panda means so much, but also the red panda is such a great source of comedy. I love the physics of the hair, which is like a big thing I remember so distinctly, Brian, being like 8 years old and seeing what was called Disney's Movie Surfers, which I don't know if you have any memory of this. It was on Disney Channel, and it was like a little like 5-minute show where it was like, hey, we're gonna interview like some people behind the scenes, talk to somebody who worked on like this upcoming Disney movie. And for Monsters Inc., they had the thing where it was like, this is the first time we've been able to really do like hair in a way. And I was like, holy fucking shit, that hair, it looks so real. And I think they've come such a long way to like the degree this movie is so crucially about like hair physics and fur physics in a way that like feels perfect with like the way that even like the hairs like that are left behind by May, or so like when Sandra was like trying to use the vacuum cleaner, like very funny. But then even like the bit where the grandmother like pulls up like the little bit of hair, just like, I know that you've been turning into the panda, and if you keep doing it, you might not be able to like get rid of it if like the ritual goes wrong. Like the hair physics is so crucial to elements like that, just on a visual level. And then the way that like she is like whenever she's running around, like I love the sequence early on where like she turns in school and then runs home like across like the different fucking rooftops and stuff.
When she turns in the classroom and it like does like slow-mo, the pink like mist is like everywhere across in the classroom is just like so good.
Sitting still is like all the background elements are moving, very anime inspired kind of thing. But yeah, and also even I got a lot of that sequence, speaking of 2002, got a lot of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Oh, sure.
On them rooftops,
oh yeah.
Which would have been the du jour. These kids would have seen Spider-Man in a theater this summer, Brian, and they would have loved the Macy Gray Nutmeg Fantasy number that happens in the middle of that movie that is so 2002.
And we talked about like the physics of it, and it is like very. It's the part of like, I don't want to say photorealistic necessarily, but it's the mixture of Pixar being basically a tech company in a lot of ways. Obviously, their connection to Apple and stuff like this. Like they've always been a tech forward company pushing CG
Yes.
animation to as far as they can do. Like I remember watching, like when I watched Coco in theaters. There's a shot in that movie of like one of like the little glasses, like the whiskey glass kind of thing.
Yes.
And I was like, it looks real. Like we have reached peak realistic animation or whatever. But there is a mixture that you can, like, again, we talked about like you lose a lot of creativity when you go for photorealism, and I love that as realistic as the fur is, the physics and everything, they break that. Like when she's running home, like that sequence you're talking about, when she has to run through the little alleyway, and she's just like squat, like has to like
yes, like
get
trying
narrow
to
to like
yes.
like
Yes.
it breaks those rules as much as it wants to be like to look like a movie from 2025 and look very technologically impressive.
Yeah, it has its own specific rules, I think, which is what's like once again kind of missing from Pixar is like it is diverging away from like the house style, doing something very distinct and specific, but being willing to like be a cartoon, which is like something I always was like. This is obviously like the most infamous example to me of this, like that contrast working so terribly, is The Good Dinosaur, where the whole thing is like that movie had like the very realistic backgrounds. It looked like someone's just stepping through like an actual canyon. It looks gorgeous and immaculate, and they have like, quite frankly, some Fisher Price looking fucking dinosaur designs in that movie. And it's just like, this doesn't compute at all. This is like a clash that's like disastrous for this movie.
No, exactly. It's always been a clash for Pixar, I think, as we've gotten over the years, and like especially as they've wanted to do more outlandish character design. Like again, like Onward has that kind of issue. Like God, I should like Onward so much. Like I love that sort of like fantasy
that is kind of
aesthetic.
your shit in theory, yeah.
It is, but that movie just like it doesn't work for so many reasons, but it has that kind of issue where these like crazy fantasy designs clash with the kind of like photorealistic look of the movie, and it's very impressive. I remember watching like what's the like umbrella short? Do you remember that? I think it was attached to Inside Out.
Yes.
Where like I think it was the first time they had like, oh, the camera, quote unquote, can move like a camera, like it can mimic like handheld camera. And I was like, what? Like that's insane. And a thing I love also about Turning Red is the lighting. Like you really have like it's modern lighting. Like there's a lot of moments that like with like reflections, with like a lot of the lights in like her room, like obviously the Sky Dome sequence, like it looks modern but still feels expressive and still feels unique in that way. And I think exactly it's a lot of what's been missing, and same with like the character design as we've been talking about. Like I don't know, their look is like, it's not necessarily the Spider-Verse thing, but there is a kind of like 2D inspiration for a lot of their looks and the way that their faces move, and like the way like I find it so refreshing, I think, to have this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I want to shout out in particular the stuff we get. We were mentioning kind of the ritual, like when we get into like the kind of like weird sort of other realm that's like surrounded by like the different like forestation and all this other stuff. I think that's a wonderful visual way of just conveying kind of like a weird nexus point, like in a spiritual realm. I think that is like, it's just simple enough and it doesn't like overcomplicate things. And even the visual thing of like when they go through like the kind of pathway, it like the woman would go through and then like the panda disappears out the other side.
Yes, that's really
I love
good.
that visually. That's such a good visual metaphor. And then even just like the simple detail with like we didn't mention this, but after she gets the red panda stuff, I love the detail that May has red hair for like the rest of the movie pretty much. I think that's a really clever way of like indicating such a change. But the fact that like when she goes back into that realm during the climax and she sees the 13-year-old version of her own mother, and they both have red hair, and they both just relate to each other. it's this magic thing that, like, I don't know, I've thought about ever since, like, I heard about the premise for, like, Back to the Future of, like, oh, what if you met your parents and you were the same age?
Mm-hmm.
Think that concept's so fascinating, and I love that even in this, like, sliver of a moment, it really feels so intimate about just, like, this young girl seeing, like, her mom at her age crying in a similar way she did, like, mere days ago. About the similar things, like, I accidentally attacked my mom, and I hate it, and the little subtle factor, like, the mom has the one mark, the grandmother, right above her eye, to indicate, like, oh, that attack that happened. It's so beautiful and sweet, and it's, once again, like, that's a heartbreaking, beautiful little moment. But it doesn't feel like a lot of the other Pixar movies where, like, that often works for me. It's the big thing, like, ever since I remember seeing Toy Story 2 in a theater.
Oh yeah.
Bawling as a child at Jesse's backstory. And Pixar, I think for a while, did a good job of having an emotional, like, moment really work and punctuate a scene. As opposed to, I said this on the Patreon thing. I still maintain it. We're a little bit into this episode, so I can say it. I think another problem is that, like, they ratcheted that so much with Toy Story 3, with the fucking, like, garbage dump thing, that I feel like, as much as the other sort of Pixar movements before that, the emotional moments were kind of chasing the Jessie thing from Toy Story 2, like, the moments is like in Finding Nemo or Incredibles don't feel like they're just ripping off that. They feel like emotionally earned bits. Ratatouille. Like, all these movies have a similar moment, but it does feel earned. It doesn't feel like it's the Pixar kind of formula. And then when you have, like, the ratcheting up to Toy Story 3, it's like, well, fuck, we gotta match that. The dinosaur and the caveman have to, like, not be friends anymore. Aren't you sad? No? No?
Yeah. It's like, it's my thing with Onward, where, like, I don't think that movie's emotional elements work at all. I think by the time it gets to that big finale, it feels like there's a stopwatch, and it's like, and now's when the audience is supposed to cry.
Yes.
As opposed to this, where it's like, it's also just understated. A lot of these movies have, like, the score swells and the zoom into the character for, like, we hold on their face for a while, and it's just like, oh my god, isn't this so emotional? And it's like, a movie like Coco definitely made me cry, like, so much.
Yeah.
It is also definitely, it has that issue a little bit. Like, it feels like kind of by the numbers, like it's cookie cutter in that way.
I'm gonna stop this Coco slander.
Oh no,
Far. No, but I guess I get what you're talking about in terms of, like, there is a bit of, like, the railing there, but I think it's a great roller coaster on that railing. It does so much.
Oh
that
yeah,
railing. And
but it is
the fact that it has, like the the cartoon skeletons and all this other stuff that, like, leads us eventually into this, I think works incredibly well.
Yeah, I think it's an example of it, like, it works, and also it's when I start to sort of, like, clock that, like, oh right, there is a formula that they're doing here, but this movie, like, is so understated in that. And I think it's going back to that thing you're talking about. It's why I love Luca so much, because it's a great story. Like, you have a really good story here with the group of friends and the family dynamics, and all of this stuff is so well established and well conveyed and well animated, obviously, that a moment like that, like, really, really works. And I love also right after that, where they're walking, like, right next to each other, and we see, like, as the tree passes, Sandra Oh's character, like, gets older.
Oh,
and it really, really works. I think, like, again, like, I can't overstate how much I love this more understated thing. Great thing about LEO also is that it kind of gets out before it can become too cloying, you know? It's a thing that, like, Inside Out kind of has that, where it has to have a moment where all the characters get together and cry and have this big emotional moment. And yeah, it just feels way more earned, and is also just really visually expressive. Yeah, with that whole, like, bamboo, like, forest, which is just, like, so amazing. And again, the fact that you have it in this, like, stadium is just is crazy.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I also want to shout out, like, I've brought them up briefly, but Rosalie Chiang and Sandra Oh, wonderful voice performances in this movie. I think they feel so distinctly like they have a great mother-daughter dynamic that feels so natural. And especially Sandra Oh is somebody who, like, I'm more aware of than I think I've seen most of her work, because she worked so much in, like, television. Like, she was on Grey's Anatomy for fucking a decade.
Yeah, Killing Eve I've never seen.
Right, same thing, yeah. So, like, I'm aware of Sandra Oh, but I don't think I've just seen quite as much stuff as I maybe should have. But she's incredible in this movie. I think the comedic timing in particular, like the upset mom dynamic, like the bit, one of my favorite lines in this movie, where like May tries to pitch the whole Four Town concert, and I love that shot of like her with like the bust, and like she's wearing a suit jacket and she's got like a PowerPoint presentation going, and then her mom's like, no, that can't happen, and like she leaves in frustration. She's like, oh, I don't know what's up with her. This is so crazy. And what's so important about these like guys? Who are they? Celine Dion? What a perfect mom response. The most like mom 2002 response they could make. And the fact, once again, that dynamic you were talking about earlier about like her and the dad, where he just is like, I don't know, maybe we should trust her or something. Like, no, we can't do that. Like, oh, like it's like wonderful. Yeah, like great comedic time, but also that sincere, like emotional stuff that hits later. I think it's really a lot on O. Even that one bit that like feels also very distinctly like a moment I would have lived, when like she's lying out the mathletes thing with her mom, and it's like right before the aunts come in, I think, and she's like, oh, you know what, I'll help you out. I was the champion of mathletes. I'll get my flashcards and I'll help you and the girls out.
They called me the uncommon denominator or whatever.
Yes, great line. Well, like, and as they're walking out, she's like trying to like, oh no, it's gonna be boring or whatever. Like, don't worry, I'll join. It's like, no, I don't want you to come. Very relatable moment of like you setting boundaries with your parents about like, I want to have a social interaction that's not involving you.
Well, there's a moment in the movie that is also, again, weird for Pixar because it's not referenced at the end, where she like, the thing that May is able to do to sort of calm herself down is think of her friends. And when her mom, like, she tries to prove it to her parents, she's like, I just thought of the people who I love most in the world.
Oh.
And her mom has that look, and she's like, which is obviously you guys. And that's not, she never has, I always thought that she brought it up during, like, the big fight at the end. And she doesn't. It is just this, like, I don't know, sort of unspoken thing between them that I think is, like, really kind of beautiful. I was also just going to say that, like, the line I mentioned, the, like, uncommon denominator thing, it's such a mom thing, and it's very Marge Simpson, like,
yes,
here comes the shack attack, like,
yes.
You know, as we're getting to the end of this movie, I love the kind of the way it resolves the friends dynamic, like where she goes up to them and she's like, I'm sorry, like I messed up, blah blah blah, and I think Miriam is the one who is like, well, you did do that. Like, you did mess up. You didn't back us up.
Right, which is like I'm sorry, I I lost you guys. Like, well, too bad. It happened. Yeah.
Yeah, it's way more emotionally mature than I think a lot of the later Pixar movies can be. And I don't know, just how kind of quickly but earned it resolves that, where it's like, oh, she's been taking care of your Tamagotchi, actually. Like, she was mad, but she was still, yes. Like,
so funny. But no, yeah, I love all that, and I even love like the way this was resolved, where it's like she gets to still keep the panda. I think is so key, because like that moment with the grandmother could be, you know, like more traditional like ticking clock thing of like, oh no, we gotta do this, or else we'll be a panda forever, or something like that. There's that version of the story that's like much more traditional and boring. Like, oh, she wants to maintain like the ability to turn into a panda. And it's not like gonna ruin her life or whatever. It's something she likes to have the ability to do, and like a way to live her own life. They even say that the aunts were just like, oh, isn't she gonna go through too? It's like, it's her life. It's what she wants to do. We're not gonna like argue with her about it. And I find that that's once again very emotionally mature, like you were talking about. That feels like a very earnest emotional thing, especially like the resolve is so cute. The little epilogue is so adorable, where it's like, oh, she turns to the panda, and that brings more people into the temple, and it rises a business, which is good because they need to pay off the sky dome, which is such a good payoff. With like the chalk, the marker thing, such a fun.
Yes. I also love the like obviously, like you mentioned, like they have to keep the panda in this kind of like pendant.
Yes.
And I love the mom earlier reference, or the grandma earlier references that like, oh, 4 is an unlucky number. Like that's another reason why they don't want her to go to the concert. And hers ends up being in the little like 4 town like chain,
Keychain.
basically.
Yeah, love that.
It's really good.
But yeah, is there any other stuff, Brian? Any like moments we haven't mentioned or details you want to shout out about this movie? Before we get the final thoughts.
We don't see a lot of the concert. I love what we see of the concert though, with like the boys appearing in like the cages and they have like the wings and they fly, and like I love like when the Ming kaiju panda shows up and they're still like up on the harnesses and they're like screaming. It's just like really, really funny. And I really think this finale here is it's so different than a lot of what Pixar has done. Like, I think because the stakes of this are so low in terms of like it is just about a group of girls who want to go to a concert, that I always kind of get a bit tired when we get to the big finale of a lot of these Pixar movies, again because a lot of the formulaic elements we've been talking about. But this one, I just like, it's so crazy and big and whatever that I just like, I love it every single time. I mean, like, just also just as you were talking about Rosalind Ching's like lines, I love her like speech where she's just like, I love Four Town, I like gyrating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to mention before we get into like final thoughts at all?
I mean, we shouted out Billie Eilish and Phineas, of course, people who I was very aware of. I was aware of before this, but yeah, it's so interesting, like their contributions. But we should shout out also, the score is done by the legend Ludwig Göransson, one of the most prolific and a lack of any kind of misses whatsoever fucking musical composers working right now. And I love his score for this movie that has like a bit of like Chinese instrumentation, but also some like 2000s era specific, like kind of synthy, like boy band backing tracks as well. That like works perfectly. It melds together. It really helps prepare you for like that moment at the climax you were mentioning, where like Four Town and the ritual are going on at the same time, like that kind of melding of cultures, which I think is like so clever, and once again feels like a great way of like showing representation, but like in a way that still doesn't feel like we're cloying. It just feels like we're from a specific perspective. All the music stuff just like really, I think it works wonderfully. Like the chase music, the really emotional, hefty stuff, that when to use it, when to not. Like you're kind of mentioning, the score isn't overbearing at all. It's an incredible soundtrack.
I agree. Yeah, and again, like I get it. Like I think Billie Eilish and Phineas had won Oscars in both like 2021. That's when they won for the Bond theme, and 2023 they won for Barbie.
Yeah.
But those songs are just really good, and for two people who like, I really like Billie Eilish's music. I really like her first 2 albums. I haven't really listened to her last album, to be honest, but her music is not this sort of like type of pop music, you know?
No,
like it's a very different type of pop music. So for them to have made this good of like a sort of like amalgamation of what this early 2000s boy band pop music was, like they're absolutely great tracks. And yeah, like Göransson just like, you know, he's one of these guys who also like, he will do this and like obviously Oppenheimer and stuff, and he does a bit of like a bit of nothing, you know, with respect to him, like, you know, like he did like the 2018 Death Wish score, which like okay, but yeah, he just, when he's on, like he's just one of the best composers working today.
Anyway, I also want to shout out while we're talking about the music and stuff. The name of the 4 Town members. I want to lay these out. Robert, great. Jesse, feels very distinct. Taeyong, and then both Aaron T and Aaron Z. So funny that there are 2 Aarons.
There's many like fantasy daydreams in this movie. One of my favorite ones is like they establish that Robert like speaks French, and there's the one where he like at the camera goes mon amour.
And he's a merman, I think, at that point. Yeah, there's a lot of those cute things. There's all the bits. Oh, you know what? We didn't talk about this scene that's really funny. Like, we mentioned this, I think, earlier. Like, the whole emotional test thing that the parents put on May. Great scene. Of just, like,
yes.
Look, deforestation. A sad orangutan. and then, like, ending it with, like, the kittens. It's just like, oh, how adorable. She passed the kitten test.
They do a lot of, also in that scene too, speaking of the animation, a lot of, like, the, like, anime eyes, where they, like, kind of, like...
Yes.
Like glow, or like, I don't know what you would call that necessarily, but it's like, it's so expressive, and like it's so un-Pixar in a lot of ways. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Also, just one other thing that, like, I didn't know about until I was rewatching this movie this time. There's a post-credit scene in this movie.
Oh yeah, it's a fun little, like,
Right,
little, like,
yeah, where the
thing
dad is singing along and has, like, the to the Four Town music and has, like, the Jesse glasses on. Great. Love that, especially in, like, the basement, and they're trying to get to call him up for dinner or whatever. Very funny. But yeah, let's go ahead and go into final thoughts, Brian. Your final thoughts on Pixar's Turning Red.
Yeah, this is maybe along with Luca, like, maybe the best thing Pixar has done in a decade. You know, in the past decade, I would say. Like, again, I stand up for Incredibles 2. I think that movie fucking rules, and like, I actually have not rewatched Coco since I saw it in theaters. I should rewatch it, but it is very emotionally devastating. So,
What am I talking about? That's a fun afternoon.
Remember me.
Oh no, Brian!
Again, every time they announce that they're doing a new Toy Story or new Incredibles, I get so depressed. I just really think with Incredibles 3, like, if you're not gonna get Brad Bird to do it, then don't fucking do it. It's like, it's the same thing I feel about, like, the Oceans movies. If you're not gonna get Steven Soderbergh to do it, why fucking bother?
Get David Leitch, right? Exactly. That's what we'll do, Brian. Thank you for your suggestion.
Yeah, but this and Luca, again, feels so refreshing. Like, that's the real word I want to use here. Because, again, like, I like Soul, but it's Doctor doing his thing, you know, and he does have a bit of a thing, and the movie's good, but again, it also just has one big glaring issue that really bothered me this last time I watched it. But this sort of, like, what we're talking about, the Pixar is like, yes, they have these outlandish ideas. Yes, they want to have these loftier metaphors / themes that kind of make you cry and whatever. But they need to have good stories. And this and Luca have really good stories, and also just have a different vibe. Just a really, like, as much as we're talking about, this movie has a lot of, like, deep, complex, like, metaphors and stuff. It's very cozy. It's very rewatchable.
Yes.
And in the same way I feel about Luca, like, that movie has just, like, this very laid back style. This one is more frenetic. I kind of feel like A side and B side a bit. And with this movie, it's exactly why, like, Pixar needed to change, especially after Lasseter left. And once again, fuck John Lasseter.
Yep.
And it's why it's like, it is a prime example. Like, it's a very cliche thing to say, but we need more women, not just in animation, but, like, making films, because this thing is so creative. Like, watching it last night, I think I said this earlier, but, like, watching it last night, the first 5 minutes have so much fucking energy and are just such a, like, bolt of electricity as you're watching it, that you're like, oh my god, like, this is amazing. And it also is still a Pixar movie. It has the emotions, it has the beautiful technology behind it, but it's still so expressive. It has just, like, a real specificity. We've been saying that a lot, but, like, it is so specific to not just 2002, but to a lot of experiences of, like, growing up as the children of immigrants, growing up as a woman specifically. And I just think, like, there's two directions that Pixar can kind of go down, of making the sequels, making the stuff that, like, Elemental is kind of like the bad side of this, where it has a lot of the same, like, the metaphor Pixar elements, but, like, just completely fumbles it and does it in a completely bad way. And there's this that is so specific and has so much creativity, and I just want them to do more of this. I am really excited to see what Domishi works on next because, like I said this before, but like she is a real like voice at Pixar that I just want to see more from. I think by the time this comes out, Elio will be out of theaters, but please watch Elio. Like I think there's an element of that movie that looked a bit generic from a Pixar perspective, but it has so much going for it as well. And
the trailers really missold that film.
Yeah. And I think like a reason that movie works is because Domishi brought her kind of her thing to it, her sensibility, her style. And yeah, I'm curious to see what the next few years will look like for Pixar because they've been in this weird transition point, and I just want them to make more stuff like this and stuff like Luca and stuff like Elio, and yeah, this movie is fantastic. I think like it absolutely rules. It's so good.
We were kind of speaking about this earlier in terms of the kind of the Disney Plus COVID releases of it all. The fact that we had Soul, Luca, and then Turning Red go straight to Disney Plus without any kind of theatrical release, I think was Disney unintentionally sending a message. Because like when it happens one time, it's a special circumstance. When it happens twice, it's like, okay, maybe is this a trend? Third time feels like a trend, I think, for audiences, and sends the message of just like, oh, a Pixar movie isn't really worth seeing in a theater. Really. And I think that's a real tragedy for all three of those movies, even with like Soul is probably my least favorite of those, but there's a lot of creativity going on in Soul I can respect. But really insults after like a Luca, which I agree has like such a emotionally quiet, devastating kind of quality to it. And then Turning Red has a very loud, but like incredibly endearing, incredibly charming, laugh-a-minute sensibility that also has like a lot of heavy emotion in it, that also has a very specific cultural perspective of a teenage girl who, in 2002, who had, was the children of Chinese immigrants, who literally lives at a temple and has all these other elements to it. Like, there's so many of these details, and that just makes, like, you know, any kind of story endearing when you have that specificity, when you have that lived-in quality, when you have that element that, like, a person has experienced these things I'm watching. It makes it feel more human, it makes it feel more engaging, it just makes it more, like, fun to watch on a screen, especially when you set the dynamics so well, when I'm so endeared to, like, as someone who, like, felt like Buzz and Woody were my best friends as a child, I still feel that, like, growing up to this point, I have a completely different perspective on, like, all these cute, adorable, like, 13-year-old girls who have so much investment in, like, a concert and all these other things. It feels like Pixar kind of maturing in a certain way with their movies, but also not forgetting to have their fun, cartoony, silly, stupid antics that just make, like, all the emotional stuff actually have heft and earnestness. It kind of feels like, we mentioned The Simpsons as an influence. James L. Brooks talked about this many times, of who developed The Simpsons, and also an incredible legend of film and television in particular, with his sitcoms and stuff. He always really emphasized on, like, really pack your episode of a show or your movie with a lot of jokes that, like, really make your characters seem clever and charming and engaging. And then when you do have an emotional element come in, don't last too long on it. Just have it just enough. That's what some of the best moments in The Simpsons are, where, like, it's not a 2-minute scene of, like, Homer and Lisa reconnecting. It's, like, a minute, and it says everything that, like, feels economic to the story and feels, like, incredible and really helps you, like, get out of that episode having felt like you laughed a lot and you, like, really loved, like, this relationship that went on between, like, any of these Simpsons characters. And I think that's very present in Turning Red in a way that isn't quite as present in the traditional Pixar mold. I agree with you that I want to see more stuff like this. I'm afraid that the bombing of Elio might mean that we get less of these as time goes on, and I really don't want that to happen. I'm very excited about the Gato movie, though, for the record. Pixar starts developing a cat movie after Flow wins the best animated feature. I'm just saying. Feels a bit the same thing, interesting.
Actually. It's a little interesting, yeah.
Yeah, that happened. But hopefully, you know, I think that might maybe stem at the same time, like, some healthy competition to be able to, like, kind of make something more in that vein, experiment a bit. That's what I think Pixar really needs to do. I agree. I don't think, like, I know, like, look, Toy Story 5, sure, it'll make a lot of money. I'm not denying that. Like, it's not it feels kind of foolproof to a certain degree, but I don't know how foolproof you can go with like even like another Incredibles, even Coco 2. I think might piss people off that's happening. Honestly,
Yeah.
even though Lee Unkrich is coming back or whatever, fine. But I don't know. It definitely feels like if we get more Turning Reds and we promote these Turning Reds up to like a higher status. Especially, even when it came out in theaters, I think, wasn't it the highest grossing of the ones that, like, when they re-released them in theaters later, Turning Red? It made, like, 20 million in a limited release capacity, which, for that, especially how limited that was, I was so disappointed I couldn't go to that in its limited run. It feels like it was, like, one of the, the one at least people responded more to, and even, like, to this day, I think, of those Disney Plus movies, Turning Red feels like the one that's kind of permeated the culture. Not quite Soul, not quite Luca. That one does feel like it just has like that kind of strong, at least cult appreciation that I think will really grow over the next, several years. And great movie. In my top 5 Pixars, I should mention this. It's my number 5. Number 4 is Ratatouille. Number 3 is Up. We're not going to talk about it now, Brian. This has been a running thing, Brian. I have
It really has, yeah.
a bit of a disagreement about Up. And then number 2 is Incredibles. Number 1 is Toy Story 2.
Yeah, I have not done my Pixar rankings officially,
Yes.
but Ratatouille is one of the greatest films ever made, and I will.
Yep.
And so is The Incredibles. Just the Brad Bird stuff is just some of the.
Would Turning
films of all
Red
time.
inch toward that top 5? Maybe be in that top 5?
It would be up there, I think, because like the thing is, like Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc. Like, those are movies that are just so near and dear to my heart still to this day. And I would maybe swing more Luca. Like, that one, I think, for me, like...
Interesting, okay.
It is the one that I think, like, just really... I don't know. It really grabbed me, and it really grows on me the more that I think about it.
But Cars 2 is still number 1 in your heart.
Oh, of course.
Come on. Yeah. Mater.
When he has the wasabi, it's very culturally sensitive.
Right, yeah. Well, on that note, Brian, I think it's time we transitioned into our usual segment, Between the Lines. So in every episode of Cinema to the Letter, we have our segment Between the Lines, where Brian and myself go ahead and recommend a movie that is related to the one that we're talking about today, or maybe could be an alternate choice for the letter. In this case, N for New for animation. And I'm gonna start here with a movie that did come out fairly recently, an N for New pick. In fact, I believe at the time that this is being released, it'll be available to stream on Max. Even though this company didn't really want this fucking movie to come out, Warner Brothers. I'm talking about The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, which came out earlier this year in theaters in a very limited run, thanks to Ketchup Entertainment, after Warner Brothers completely abandoned this movie and left it on a doorstep, and Ketchup Entertainment naturally picked it up. And it is a traditional 2D animated movie starring Daffy Duck and Porky Pig. And it's a narrative feature. It is like feature length. It's about 91 minutes long. And it does have a full feature length film story that focuses on Daffy and Porky, who in the opening are established as being adopted brothers who were adopted by a mysterious, weird character named, I think it's Farmer John, I believe, who, like, it's such a weird, like, the stylistic thing. He looks like a painting, basically, brought to life. And he's taking care of like little Porky and Daffy, and he's like raises them right, and then he ends up passing on and leaving them this house that they've lived in into their adult lives. But at a certain point, the homeowners association comes by and is like, your house is dilapidated, so much has gone wrong. There's a hole in your roof, which you see like a giant gaping hole that was caused by a meteorite going through at the opening of the film. And Porky and Daffy try and like get some jobs so they can fix the roof, so that they can keep the house. They end up working at a gum factory at a certain point. That's like the most popular place in town. That has a new flavor of gum that's premiering, and it turns out that some of this gum has been infected with like the leavings of this meteorite, which has an alien, sort of like goo inside of it, that turns the gum into like basically a transmitter, so that if you chew on this gum, you become controlled by the aliens. So Porky Pig, Daffy Duck, and this new character, Petunia Pig, who's like one of their co-workers that Porky has a bit of a crush on, who works at the gum factory, is developing the gum flavor stuff, have to save the world from aliens. It's interesting, because like when I first heard about this before all this stuff happened, where Warner Brothers completely tossed it off to the side, I was a bit concerned about, like, how do these characters work in like a long-form animation, like especially like a feature-length story. And I can safely say that The Day the Earth Blew Up is one of my favorite Looney Tunes things in quite a while. It's from director Peter Braungart, which I should mention, he developed a lot of the shorts that are on that were on Max, that were hidden on Max, quite frankly, the newer Looney Tunes shorts that are really good and feel like they have kind of like a classic style to them. This one definitely evokes kind of like Bob Clampett, kind of like 40s era stuff with like the way the gloves are and stuff on the characters, but it's also just like so rapid fire, funny joke after funny joke. Truly a movie that feels like it's made by, in the modern parlance, like storyboard artists who feel like they're so integral to animation, but simultaneously so completely decried by like animation studios who are like, no, let's cut down storyboarding budget. Sure, fine. The crux of what makes animation work, and so many great like bits of animation in this movie, incredible vocal performances. I should mention Eric Bauza is the guy who's taken over for doing the Looney Tunes, I think, ever since like the 2010s, and he's like the new Mel Blanc in that he like does every voice, like all of them. And like in the new Space Jam movie, not a great movie, but he did a very good job with all of those voices. I think he's right. Look, I have to bring this up because that's the contrast we've got, Brian. That was the most recent sort of Looney Tunes thing, and I fucking hated it so dearly. And I was like, what's the future of these characters? What's gonna happen? And I think this movie resolves that incredibly. Like, this is such a great path once again for like what the Looney Tunes could be, where it is like a big story, but there's enough room for like great individual animation set pieces. Like, there's a great sequence where they're working at the gum factory, and there's a fantasy thing where like Porky and Daffy are like so excited about having this job, and it's wonderful, weird, different animation style that comes in that looks so good. I think the whole conflict with like the main sort of alien creature, it feels like it's evoking like 50s sci-fi, but the performance from, it's Peter McNichol, who's a great like character actor you've seen in like Ghostbusters 2, a bunch of other things. Wonderful character actor, plays the main alien villain, and it's such a funny villain performance. It's like, there's a lot of him like being very bored and like just sipping like on a soda. He just has like a soda in his fucking hand at a certain point. He keeps like drinking, and it's like an elongated, wonderful gag. It's a great movie. I hope more people see it. I was very surprised that like, even though it came out once again from Ketchup Entertainment, a joke production company, distribution company name, but they managed to put it out, and it made like $15 million despite no advertising, which I think just speaks to, even though the movie cost $15 million, so it's kind of like, it's not a massive pull, but the fact that it got that much with a limited budget shows these characters still matter. And if you make a fun movie, like I saw this in a crowd like late at night, like no kids in sight, but a crowd of like adults, we were laughing hysterically at this movie, Brian. It's so funny, it's so great, it really respects these characters and makes them work for like an actually engaging emotional story, which I was very surprised by for this feature-length film. The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie. Great movie that came out earlier this year. I'm guessing you haven't seen it, Brian, but are you intrigued to see it?
No, yeah. I think I didn't know that this was coming out, and like I follow movies. Like I, like that's kind of how low key it was. And I think it also came out the week that like a few other really hot, like big movies came out. So unfortunately, it was lower on the totem pole.
Right.
Priority totem pole. But I will be immediately checking it out when it's on Max. Like, yeah, I love the Looney Tunes, and yeah, Space Jam: A New Legacy is just such a horrible way to have these characters in a modern setting, and so yeah, especially it being like an actual animated, or just like 2D animated Looney Tunes movie. Like, yes, please. Like, I very much want to see that.
Yeah, and also I really hope that the mild success, at least of this movie, helps Coyote versus Acme, which Ketchup
Yes.
Entertainment is releasing.
Ketchup,
Yeah, God bless ketchup. My favorite condiment. Fuck mustard. Terrible stuff.
Well, okay, I can't sanction that.
Look, okay, it's late in the episode. We can't have this argument now.
How do you feel about mayo?
Bryan, how do you think I feel about mayo?
It's true.
As a white man, how do you think I feel about mayo?
As an Italian?
Oh, that's true. But yeah, I really hope also that like this ends up getting. There was another movie that they were in the middle of making that got kind of shut down by like the Warner Brothers animation layoffs. That was going to be like a big musical with Bugs Bunny, like with a lot of songs written. I would love to see that. I hope that gets somehow produced. I don't know how at this point, but that sounds grad, especially from this team. Hell yeah, I want to see them do way more stuff with these characters. But yeah, what's your recommendation for Between the Lines, Bryan?
Well, my recommendation is the movie that beat Turning Red at the Oscars for Best Animated Film. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, from 2022 as well, directed by del Toro and the late Mark Gustafson.
Yes.
Who unfortunately, passed away recently. This is a retelling of the classic Pinocchio story, but just with Guillermo del Toro's very dark and incredible sense of fairy tale storytelling that he has. It is stop motion. It was released on Netflix. I almost feel like people take this movie for granted a little bit, because I rewatched it this weekend and I adore this movie. I think, and I love Del Toro. I really love his sense of storytelling, his sense for creepy monsters and just like gothic shit, but also his sense of like deep emotionality, deep humanity, and like a real sense of like he's one of the only guys I think who can just translate the sense of like fairy tales into like modern setting, which he's done obviously with like Pan's Labyrinth, The Shape of Water, stuff like that. But this retelling of Pinocchio set against the rise of fascism in Italy in the early 20th century is my favorite like Pinocchio story. I like the Disney animated film, but this, I mean, the fact that it is stop motion, of course, but it's an incredibly dark movie, that deals with death and deals with, there's a lot of Pinocchio stories out there, and a lot of creators over the years have been really fascinated with like what the story of Pinocchio like means, and I love that Del Toro, in the kind of making of Pinocchio by Geppetto, like frames it as this like horrific and sad event where Geppetto has lost his real son Carlo, and so he, in a fit of like drunken like sadness and grief, creates this boy Pinocchio who's like, "You're my papa," and immediately Geppetto is like, "You are not my son. Get the fuck away from me, you monster, you abomination." And just how he has to kind of come to terms with this not being his son, and how Pinocchio has to deal with, the idea of death, which is like, I don't want to spoil too much in case people haven't seen it or anything, but the way that this movie deals with Pinocchio's death, which is such a funny sentence to say, is kind of beautiful in that he can become reincarnated, basically, in a kind of Christ-like way that the movie does treat. One of the very memorable scenes in this movie is when Geppetto is fixing the town crucifix, and Pinocchio goes like, I don't understand. Everyone likes him, but why don't they like me? I'm also made of wood. And just the Christ imagery and kind of connection, as well as the kind of like fascist background and all of that, is something that only Del Toro would have done. I think he just has such a great handle on this, and a great way of updating this story to be about how children are kind of indoctrinated into like fascism, and the way that, again, I do, as a kind of bonus here, there's a video that I'm gonna send Thomas so you can maybe like put it in the show notes or something.
Finally, input about social media from you.
It's this video from a YouTuber called Jacob Gellar, who did a big sort of deep dive on the various Pinocchio stories and what Pinocchio actually means. And he goes into Del Toro's Pinocchio, of course. And I just think, again, Del Toro has such a perfect handling on this story, in my opinion. It is still dark, like Pinocchio should be, but he makes a lot of like small adjustments, like making the kind of Pleasure Island sequence this kind of fascist boot camp for children, and like just so many different, like the representation of the Blue Fairy in this movie, played by Tilda Swinton, which, I mean, the cast of this movie is out of this world. You have Ewan McGregor, David Bradley, Bern Gorman, Ron Perlman is in this movie. Kate Blanchett plays a ventriloquist monkey.
Yep.
Which is just insane. Christoph Waltz really showing his range in this movie, playing a villain.
Well, in fascist Italy,
it's
a bit different, yeah.
Very different. My favorite, just like weird thing is that Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, plays Mussolini.
Yep.
It just is so great. Yeah, and the stop motion is immaculate. I just cannot get over how beautiful this movie is. I just love like the design for Jiminy Cricket in this movie. I love, and Ewan McGregor is amazing as the voice, but like, just I don't know why. I just love his design. It's such a fresh take on this. If I have any kind of qualms about the movie, it's that the songs are fine.
Yep.
They're not anything amazing.
Yeah.
And you kind of wish that they could have used, like, at least, like, There Are No Strings on Me. Like, I think that, like, but...
The only song I kind of like is the, the Ciao Papa song?
Oh,
like,
yes.
he sings, like, while he's performing. I think that's the one song that kind of works.
And, of course, the song where he calls Mussolini a big poop or something, which is just really funny.
Right, yeah, the Christoph Waltz song in particular, I remember being like, why are we even doing this? This is like, let's get past this.
Yeah, I don't hate them necessarily, but again, like, compared to the Disney songs, like, they're not great. But this movie is made even better, I think, because it came out right before the Robert Zemeckis Pinocchio movie, which is awful, and this movie just absolutely chokeslams that movie.
But it can't hold a candle to the Pauly Shore one that also came out that year.
Of course. And in that video that I will send Thomas, there is reference to it, but he does not engage with that one, unfortunately.
What? That's a crucial text. My father.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a beautiful little movie that has a lot of dark elements and a lot of really sad humanity to it, like way more than I was expecting and that I remember. I mean, the ending of this movie is just, what a gut punch, I think. What an incredibly, like, beautiful little movie. It's kind of amazing that Del Toro was able to make this, because he's a guy who has had such difficulty getting stuff made. And for it to be this I will say, like, triumph of stop motion animation, which I believe one of the production companies involved was the Jim Henson Company, funnily enough, which is really, really cool. Yeah, the Alexandre Desplat score is amazing. I feel like people, when this came out, were just like, yeah, Guillermo del Toro making Pinocchio, blah, blah, blah. But, like, I adore this thing. It gets better the more that on a rewatch, and as I just think about it, I just think it's one of the best films of the decade so far. I really love it, and yeah, it's such a strange and amazing little movie. I know you have seen this movie, but have you revisited it at all since it came out at all, or how do you feel about it in general?
I unfortunately haven't. Yeah, I saw this around the time that like it came out. I was very excited for him. I love Guillermo del Toro, but I was also excited about, you didn't really mention one of his other crucial collaborators on this, Patrick McHale, who has history in animation. Particularly, he did stuff for Adventure Time and also created Over the Garden Wall, which I know you love.
Oh my god, that makes so much fucking sense with this movie.
100%. Yes. So much. A lot of that, like, that danger, but that whimsy at the same time, that's, like, very crucial to that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Del Toro, and you mentioned, like, Gustafsson, R.I.P. We're going to be talking about Gustafsson's work and that he did a lot of the animation stuff for Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Okay, great.
And he also had worked with a lot of stuff, like, he got his start with Will Vinton. He was an animator on that Adventures of Mark Twain movie I talked about earlier, and he also directed for the PJs, which was a show that Vinton stuff did, and also the Claymation Easter special, which I recently watched, that has a co-writing credit from James Mangold. Just that's a thing that exists.
Oh, that's really funny.
It's weird. But yeah, the Del Toro Pinocchio, though, I think is great. I think, especially as someone who I've talked about this before, but I have a weird connection with Pinocchio in that my grandmother loves Pinocchio. She had a full collection of various Pinocchio things that got distributed to various family members when we had to move her into an old folks home. Like, especially the Disney Pinocchio she loved, but she collected anything. Like, she had little Pinocchios from Italy and little different, like, just various different interpretations. I remember she asked me about this movie at one point, and I was very much like, I don't know if Grandma can handle fascist Pinocchio. Quite frankly, I think it's
he is an anti-fascist Pinocchio.
No, that's true, right? But Pinocchio dealing with fascism, I'm very much recalling great cinema like Puppet Master 3, which is also about that, by the way. And I know Del Toro has seen Puppet Master 3. I wouldn't bring this up if he did. Cinema. Motherfucker definitely has. Tell me, Del Toro. Tell me that was a major influence in your Oscar-winning film, Puppet Master 3: Toulon's Revenge, which is about a guy who builds puppets and fights Nazis. It's great. It's a wonderful piece of cinema that clearly influenced other great cinema, like Del Toro's Pinocchio, which I do think is great. I would like to revisit it. I found it especially, like, very interesting on the level of, like, the stop-motion animation style. It doesn't feel like it's like, oh, we're just doing Leica, or we're just doing, like, some other, like, notable style. It feels very distinct in a way that I hope, especially Netflix and animation, not a great relationship at all.
No, they've made some good stuff though, which is weird. Like Nimona, that was a good movie.
Right, or even I think one of the other movies nominated was The Sea Beast for this particular Oscar run, which is fun movie, wonderful movie, great looking movie in particular.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great that he's able to, like, have, Netflix, at least him and Fincher feel in a similar camp of, like, we'll do stuff with Netflix and they'll fund it, so we'll stick around, I guess.
Please, God, put that Frankenstein movie in theaters.
Oh, I need to see that on a big fucking screen too. I agree. I need to see that. Big and massive. But yeah, Del Toro's Pinocchio, great movie. Has some Frankenstein kind of qualities too. Like that opening bit feels very Frankenstein-esque. David Bradley's really good as Geppetto, by the way. I think a wonderful use of him as an actor. Yeah, just like generally great, wonderful movie. I agree.
Blake Nelson's play some Black Rabbits. Like, yes, come on, this is just.
Also, I love also how the movie treats like the afterlife when like Pinocchio does go into the afterlife. I love the visual look of all that. It feels definitely like it kind of in the vein of like more of an 80s animated movie. In terms of, like, it's not afraid to be fucked up and weird, but not in a way that, like, will alienate children entirely. Just, like, really give them a sense of, like, the gravity of the situation that's going on.
100%. Yeah. And I think, like, again, it's also just kind of really sweet with Del Toro's kind of weird career. It's really nice to know that he has 2 Academy Awards at this point, which is just like so. That's really beautiful. I think it's really great for him.
Yeah. Well, let's repeat our titles, Brian, for people out there in case they want to, add these animated features to their watch list, support some original animation out there. I had the 2025 Looney Tunes movie, The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie.
And I had also from 2022, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
And on that note, we're going to start wrapping up things and getting to the end of the episode. But we got to thank some people. We got to thank Burial Grid for the music used for the show. Purchases music at burialgrid.com. Thanks to Michelle Kyle for our artwork finder at MishKyle96 over on Twitter. And thanks to our supporters on Patreon, patreon.com/cinema #2 letter, where for just $1 a month, y'all get access to bonus podcasts that we put there behind the paywall. Like recently, we've been doing Marco Polo over there, the Adult Swim podcast show, and have had some guests. Friend of the show, Siobhan Irving, was a recent guest on the show, and also this particular month that this is coming out, our episode will feature Joey Hamilton, our previous guests.
Woo!
Yeah, stop cheering over there in the peanut gallery. I gotta get through this. And that stuff's there. There's also audio reviews. Like, it's July, Brian. I'm sure we're going to be covering Superman. Maybe Fantastic Four. I don't know. Who knows? Well, we'll find out as things go along. And also, hopefully, by the end of this month, you would have also heard our Back to the Future full franchise. Celebrating 40 years of Back to the Future. All that's available on the Patreon for just, like I said, the $1 a month. To get all that stuff, or $3 for an individual audio episode is as the lowest price I can put on there for Patreon. Just once again over there at patreon.com/cinema #2 letter. You can find the show in general on whatever hell site you're on. We're at cinema #2 letter there, probably, if we're there. And you can find me mostly just on Blue Sky and Letterboxd at Not the Who's Tommy.
Yeah, and you can honestly mainly find me on Letterboxd these days. So yeah, just follow me on Letterboxd. Just at my name.
And for more of us, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or other podcasting platforms. If you're listening on Talk Film Society, why not listen to all the other great shows that are here on the network? And you can dig into the archives in our Podbean main feed for the previous 9 seasons of Cinema to the Letter and all the old double-edged double bill stuff, all there for you to peruse. And nothing else if you can't support the show, monetarily. That's cool. Money can be tight. You can't always do the Patreon. But the free way to help us out is to rate, review, or simply share the show around to give us more visibility. Especially allow people to hear, whether they are red pandas or not. During that transformation process. Maybe we can be your center. Your incredible emotional center that allows you to transform back into a human instead of being a red panda. I think that's what we can provide for the people, really, Brian.
Yeah, and whether or not you live in Toronto or the rest of the world. That's
true. On that note, Brian, we should tease our next episode. Oh boy, a E for Egregious rears its head once again for a cinema to the letter. And for this particular season, our egregious film is Mars Needs Moms, the Robert Zemeckis produced mocap horror show disaster movie that was so bad that it completely destroyed an animation studio.
Yeah, which I have never seen, although I remember when it came out, and I remember seeing the title and going, I'm not seeing that, that sounds dumb. And,
what?
Yeah. I'm curious to watch it, though, and I'm very curious to talk about mocap, which is something that I may actually defend on that episode. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, you really love Robert Zemeckis' work and really pioneering the genre, and we'll get into it. We'll get into it. It's fine. Don't worry. There's also a lot to talk about with Simon Wells, the director, a fascinating figure in animation, I think, and also just real-world history. We'll talk about it. There's a lot to talk about with Mars Needs Moms. That's all for next time. But until then, Brian, I gotta tell you something very important. I got the 4-Town tickets! We gotta go. And you're such a Jesse person. I'm more of an Aaron Z person, personally. But, we can get past our differences.
Oh, Aaron Z.